you want to kind of take a seat then so we can kind of get things started here. I want to say a thank you to everybody for coming out this afternoon. I know it's a tough time right now for being that you guys are farming. You're chomping at the bit to get out there on the combine. But we thought Sunday afternoon would be a good time to take a little bit of sit back and listen to some candidates, get some ideas on what's going on with the country and with our state, with our local government, and we'll kind of go from there. Then we can enjoy smoked pork chops tonight. I'd like to get started this evening, or this afternoon, with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand, and we'll say the pledge. First, start off with our candidates, and our first candidate, I have my sheets tonight. Our first candidate is Congressman Marshall. Congressman Marshall is the congressman for the 1st District. He's a doctor from Great Bend area, and he won the primary here in August, so he is running now for the state senate, and I want to give a round of applause to Senator.
All right, well, Ray, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for moving the schedule up a little bit. And first of all, when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, it always makes me think of President Eisenhower. And you know why? President Eisenhower was famous for many, many things, but one of them was he added the phrase "under God" to our Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God. And I have to tell you that I was in shock when the Democrats had their national convention that they took "under God" out from that. And I just want to share with you all, too, that we just opened the Eisenhower Memorial, had a big grand dedication this past week, and I was able to be there with Senator Roberts. Senator Roberts told me he'd been working on it for 21 years. And it sounds like a simple thing to get done, but getting the funding for something like that is never easy. So he kept chipping away a couple $1 million every year for 21 years until he had enough funding for it. But I think you all will love it when you get to go back to Washington, D.C. You can see the World War II Memorial, which really, that would not have happened without Senator Dole's persistence. And by the way, I get to see Senator Dole on a pretty regular basis. And, all things considered, doing very well. He's just as sharp as a tack. You have to pay attention. His voice is a little softer. But if you listen closely, he'll make you laugh all afternoon long. He just celebrated another birthday. Usually every birthday, he invites my wife and myself to his condo. It's in Watergate, by the way. And anyway, he's got several stories about the Watergate Tower. So I want to share with you all another story. Usually the politicians come here, they give you their shtick. I think it'd be funner to share my favorite President Trump story with you. Is that okay? Okay. So after being there for a year, I met President Trump a couple times. And it had been one business meeting with a lot of congressmen, but he asked me to come to the Oval Office specifically to discuss health care with him. He knew that I was working on the legislation for Republicans to replace the ACA with. So I got to the White House, and Mick Mulvaney was there to greet me. Mick Mulvaney was the president's chief. So Mick was on my baseball team, our college baseball team. Recall when Steve Scalise got shot and all that stuff, right? So I knew Mick from the baseball team. He was a second baseman, really fiery guy. He's about 5'3", 103 pounds, soaking wet. And I got to the White House, and Mick brings me into his office. Okay, you got 10 minutes to the president. He's got a busy schedule, and Mick's just talking 90 miles an hour. He said, you got it done in 10 minutes. Of course, Mick, whatever you say. We're waiting for the president to get there. And I look in front of Mick's desk, and there's a dry erase board. And guess what's on Mick's dry erase board? the president's campaign promises. So every day, the staff comes to the White House to work. It's like it's a business office. President Trump's a businessman like I am. I signed a paycheck every other week for 25 years for as few as 3 people, and grew several companies to over 300 people as well. So President Trump's a businessman. To me, we're at the White House, the Oval Office, we're there to do business. So he's got the team goals there. We walk into the Oval Office, the president shakes my hand, and before I sit down, the president says, "Roger, how are your farmers doing?" I said, "Well, Mr. President, it's tough times out here." So this is 2017, right? And the Chinese trade wars are getting geared up and all that stuff. And Mr. President, it's tough out here. And we talked for 30 minutes about agriculture. And he said, "Roger, when you go back to Kansas every time, tell your farmers and ranchers that I love them." That was his exact words. "Tell your farmers and ranchers that I love them, and that we have to stand up to this bully China. Ask your farmers and ranchers to stand beside me and to give me some room, and we will get a better deal for you. But I won't sign a bad deal." And I said, "Mr. President, even though it's tough times, I've never heard a farmer or rancher say an ill word about you. And I guarantee you that you're going to win Kansas." And every time he sees me, he asks how I'm doing in Kansas. So we talked about farming and ranching. And by the way, trade to China is up 14% right now for agriculture products, up 14%. You all don't grow a lot of milo up here, but my part of the country, we're the largest milo producing district in the entire country. Milo's up to $4.17 a bushel at the Great Bend Co-op right now. China's buying every stick of it. It's record sales in corn to China right now as well. It was good to be on the way up here. Saw my first field of corn harvested for the year, maybe 7-8 miles down the road as well. So looks like a good crop. Your soybeans are so much better than ours. We have soybeans back home. They grow about this high, and I saw some here like this high. So good luck with that. And the price is back over $9 a bushel at the local Great Bend Co-op. Anyways, the president and I started talking. You all are familiar with the market facilitation payments, right? What those are? That conversation kind of started in the White House that afternoon when I was talking to the president. So we're sitting there talking. We're into a half an hour of this discussion, and I'm sitting there with the president, like this gentleman to me, and there's a coffee table between us. And on the coffee table is a red button. And I have one of those out-of-body experiences where, when I say we're talking, the president and I are talking, I'm doing most of the listening. He talks quite a bit. And I'm listening to the president, and I say to myself, my gosh, I'm little Roger Marshall. I grew up in Butler County, Kansas. That's just 30 miles outside of Wichita. 5th-generation farm kid. Both of our family farms, my mom's and my dad's, but still in the family over 100 years of age. 5th-generation farm kid. I became a 1st-generation college student, and my American dream was to become a doctor. My wife and I got married about 2 weeks before medical school, 37 years ago. We did medical school, residency, 7 years in Army Reserve, moved to Great Bend, Kansas, delivered 5,000 babies, raised 4 of our own, and now we have 2 grandsons and another one on the way. I've lived the American dream, and now I'm sitting with the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, in the Oval Office. And the president sees me staring at the red button. And he says, he looks at me and says, "Roger, I bet you're wondering what the red button's for." Before I could nod my head, he reaches over and he pushes the red button. And I look outside and I think I'm going to see bombs bursting in air. I think that I'm going to see Marine Helicopter 1 landing. I think there's going to be a Secret Service agent jump from out behind the couch and grab me, and he's going to throw the president and me into a secret cable car, and we're going to go down to that secret safe room down in the White House. And I look up there, and there's a Marine corporal with a Diet Coke for the president. I shared that story, and the joke was on me. I shared the story. I think, as you can tell, the press hits the president pretty hard, but every time I'm with him, he always says, "Roger, how are your farmers and ranchers doing?" I think it was during that discussion that I began to understand how our president connects to hardworking men and women across the country. Because he actually gives it to them, right? He actually gives it to them. He wants us to be successful. And it's been the honor of my life to work with him and support him through many, many challenges through these years as well. So that kind of takes us to today. We ran for Congress 3 years ago, and here we are now running for the Senate. I'm proud to represent the Republicans. Very proud. We've held this seat since 1932. And I'll be darned if we're going to lose it on my watch. National polling says it's a statistical tie right now in my race. National polling says President Trump's in a statistical tie in Kansas, but I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. My dad said he got a phone call from someone doing polling about 2 or 3 weeks ago. My dad's 82 years old, was the chief of police in El Dorado for 25 years. And guess what my dad told them? Click. Yeah, that's a personal question. If you would ask my dad, my family, he said at supper table, we don't talk about politics or religion. Who you're voting for is a very personal decision. And we don't go around, my dad taught me to wear my religion on my heart, not my shirt sleeve, right? So religion, politics, it's a personal thing. I really have confidence that we're going to win this thing, and we're going to win it big. We're going to send a message to the Democrats to take their money someplace else. Just this week, the largest abortion lobbyist in the country dumped $2.5 million of attack ads on me because my opponent has a 100% voting record on abortion. She's not only in favor of abortion, she's in favor of late-term abortion. She's in favor of dismemberment abortion. During the debate yesterday, I asked her if she would be in favor of murdering babies that survived abortions, which is a thing, right? It's a thing. It's hard to believe, but it's a thing. And she refused to answer the question, okay? I think that God has, He wants to give this country another chance, that we have fallen away from our faith, the faith of our forefathers. And I'm not wishing ill will on the Justice Maynard Ginsburg, which just passed. We prayed for her and we mourn her loss. But he's giving our country another chance to appoint and select and confirm another conservative, pro-life, constitutional Supreme Court justice. Someone who's not going to write the law, but will apply the law. Does that make sense? Someone will apply the law, not write the law. We don't want our Supreme Court to be the legislature. And I've only been asked this question by the press about 25 times since yesterday afternoon to compare now to 2016. The difference is this. In 2016, we had a Democrat president and a Republican Senate. Democrat, Republican. That a Senate of the opposite party of the president has not confirmed a Supreme Court justice since 1888. Okay? 1888. Versus, on the other hand, when the party of the Senate and the president are the same, 29 times they've confirmed a Supreme Court justice in the context of the last year of the president. Does that make sense? So it's apples and oranges, and why the national news won't speak the truth here. There's a huge difference between 2016 versus today. Again, a Democrat president, Republican Senate today, Republican. I think it's the Senate's commitment that their obligation to move forward, that it's the right thing to do, that if they don't do their job, we're going to fire them. Right? I think if there's a Republican senator out there that's dragging their feet on this, I think that Republicans will fire them and say, give me somebody that will stand up and lead on this issue. If the shoe was on the other foot, is there any doubt at all what the Democrats would be doing? Everyone here needs to realize what happens if we would lose the Senate majority right now. If we lose the Senate majority right now, their first vote, of course, would be to make Chuck Schumer the leader of the Senate. Their next vote is to give Washington, D.C. statehood. The next vote after that is to give Puerto Rico statehood. That gives them 4 more Democrat senators. We would never see a Republican majority the rest of our lives. They would get rid of the cloture as well, the 60-vote rule, which would limit the ability of the minority to have any say in Congress right now. So there is so much at stake, so much more I could talk about. Maybe I'll stop there, and so I've got time for some questions, but I don't want to take away time from the other candidates as well.
Congressman, you're on the House Agricultural Committee.
Yes, sir.
Do you look at possibly being on the Senate Committee then?
Oh, absolutely. That will be my first, second, and third choice. Is to be on the Ag Committee. I think I'm these 2 candidates, the only one that's qualified. As I share with people, I'm the candidate that can actually sort heifers and steers. My first job off the family farm was working at the local sale barn. Spent every weekend there. I lied about my age when I was 15 to get a job. My brother called me up on a Saturday afternoon. He was working out there. He said, well, we're really busy. Get your butt out here. We need some help. And He said, just make up your birthday. So anyway, I understand agriculture, so I'm trying to say. A great experience writing one farm bill. This will be my top priority. This is a discussion I've had with Mitch McConnell already. Senator Moran and I have had this same discussion as well. What Kansas needs to realize, this 1-2 punch that we've always had, is a person on the authorization committee, that's the Ag Committee, and then Senator Moran is on the Ag Appropriations Committee. So we write a farm bill, but then he pays for it, right? So we need to keep that 1-2 punch. There's nothing more important in Kansas, in Washington, D.C., other than confirming conservative Supreme Court justices, of course. There's nothing more important that I can think of, there are senators, than to make sure we have a presence on that Senate Ag Committee. We've had a presence on there really since 1968, and I for sure don't plan on changing that. So I think, yes, sir, absolutely. Yes, Chairman Kuckelman.
Well, first, I want to say congratulations on your debate yesterday. You did a fantastic job. Clearly, you were the winner. One sell point that your opponent keeps using is that she's some kind of a moderate. Can you kind of walk us through maybe 3 things that demonstrate that that's absolutely misleading, that she is not a moderate?
Right, right. So my opponent's tagline is she's not a moderate, that she's something, but she's absolutely a liberal. That she has a 90% voting record in the State House and Senate with Democrats, a 90% voting record with Democrats. She's never seen a tax increase she hasn't liked. She has a 100% voting record against life, 100% voting record in favor of abortion, and she has a 100% voting record on anything to do with attacking your Second Amendment as well. I think that's where it starts, and then we can dig even deeper, but I think those are issues enough for most traditional Kansas Republicans to say enough, that she's out of touch, that she's not just in favor of abortion, but she's in favor of the late term, the dismemberment abortion as well. Those are several issues. Yes, sir.
When you get elected, President Trump had his campaign promise the next 4 years of term limits on congressmen and senators. Would you be for that, and also the constitutional amendment, returning that as senators back to the state house to be elected from our state representatives?
Okay. So I signed up in favor of limited terms for Congress and the Senate the first day I got their term limits. I signed up for several legislations. I'm definitely in favor of it. Obviously, this isn't my first rodeo. I've had another entire career. Really thought that I would spend 2 or 3 terms in the House and probably be done. Wasn't expecting Senator Roberts to retire. Can't see myself spending more than 2 terms doing this. So I'm in favor of it. To be honest, it's not going to go anywhere. That it's never going to get out of committee. And then I'm not quite sure in the second question what you're talking about. Are you talking about
Constitutional amendment where now we're electing senators by majority vote instead of our state house? You have to choose representatives in that body.
Boy, I've never given that much thought, so I would, above all do no harm, I would leave it like it is. I'd have to really examine that possibility. I remember, I guess I'm thinking my history way back, that's the way it used to be, wasn't it?
Yep.
Back in the day, so I'd be hesitant to change that part of it right now, but okay. All right, listen, I think there's probably more questions, but I'm honored to represent, be the GOP nominee. I do ask for your vote, your support. If Republicans get out, we win this thing going away. That we outnumber the number of Democrats considerably. We got to do some work on the moderates, the independents as well. We'll do that as well. But if the base of the party gets out, supports President Trump, votes for Roger Marshall, votes for Jake LaTurner, and then keeps going down the list here, that's going to keep, in our state senators, our state education, all those are real important as well to keep strong conservative, pro-business, pro-life, pro-agriculture policies here in the state of Kansas. So I'm honored to be here today. I've still got a couple more events left to do, so I'm going to skip out up here, I'm afraid, before I get to eat. But if there's any pie back there, I promise I'm an expert at tasting pies, so I'll make sure I confirm the pie is good, okay? All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. And, before I forget, there are campaign signs over in the corner, so if we have, pick up a sign and go ahead and as you leave, or if you don't have one already. So I think think Senator Marshall will do an excellent job for us to represent Kansas and our American government. So, okay, our next speaker is Jake Turner. Jake is our state treasurer at this time. He was elected to the Senate in Kansas Senate as the youngest senator, and so Jake won the primary in August and against Steve Watkins, and he's going to represent us well. Jake?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you all for being here today. I know that there are a lot of other things you could be doing with your time, and the fact that you came out here today shows that you care and you understand how important this election is. And as I was telling some of you before this started, it got a lot more important just recently, didn't it? How many of you are undecided in the presidential election, by the way? Yeah, I didn't think so. I think we've got some good, strong Trump supporters here in this crowd, and you understand how important it is. And so what I want to talk about today is what we can do to help along the conservative Trump agenda in Washington, D.C. And I think what we can do is encourage our family and encourage our friends, encourage our neighbors to go out and vote in November. And that might sound like, well, sure, Jake, but it really is critical. And I know it can be sometimes uncomfortable to talk to people about politics or encourage them to get out. But it is absolutely critical that, of course, we elect Donald Trump, that we make certain, my goodness, don't we need a Republican Senate? Need to maintain it. We need to make sure Roger Marshall is elected. We need to keep the 2nd Congressional District in Republican hands. We need to win back the Kansas City district that was lost to a Democrat. We need to make sure that we have folks like Dina. Where's Dina? I just saw her. Well, make sure that we elect good people to the State Board of Education. I know we have Kevin running for the County Commission. We need to make sure we elect good, solid candidates up and down the ballot. When we look at what's on the ballot, and President Trump talked about this so well just a few weeks ago, what's on the ballot here is a foreign policy that we should be so proud is led by Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo from Kansas, that are doing an excellent job making sure that people around this world understand where America stands. And Donald Trump doesn't just say things, but he actually does them, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, coming up with a creative way to put pressure on the Palestinians from other Arab nations. How about what a wonderful job that they've been doing with our foreign policy? He's been a check on China. He has stood firm on Russia. We should be very proud of this, and it's critical that we have somebody in there that is going to be firm and let people know where we stand. Deregulation that has been the effort has been led by Vice President Pence, has been wonderful. The tax cuts have been stimulative to this economy. And by the way, we need to remind the Democrats in Washington, D.C., the way we had the strongest economy ever before COVID was tax cuts and deregulation. We cannot borrow money from China and spend it back into prosperity. It's not going to work that way. We need tax cuts, we need deregulation. And we also need to be so proud of the judicial nominees that President Trump has put forward. I think the Senate, Mitch McConnell, say what you want about Mitch McConnell, he has done one heck of a job confirming conservative judges and justices to the Supreme Court, and I think it's critical that we take this opportunity and perform the duty that these folks were elected to do, which is nominate a justice to the Supreme Court and the Senate confirm them. And I pray that it happens quickly and swiftly, and that Republicans don't get weak-kneed on us, and make sure we go straight ahead and get this done. I'm asking for your vote because this election is so critical, I think, for Republicans in Kansas. Democrats, as I mentioned earlier, won the congressional district that used to be represented by Kevin Yoder this last election. And in the Senate race, Roger Marshall is going to win that race, but Democrats have raised millions and millions and millions of dollars to put money into Kansas. And let me tell you something, the money's not coming from Kansas, it's coming from the coasts. My opponent is the mayor of Topeka, Michelle de la Isla. She was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi. She has had fundraisers with people like Elizabeth Warren. She had one, I kid you not, with Adam Schiff on Monday night this week. Martin Sheen, the actor, sent out a fundraising solicitation for my opponent. They really think that they can turn Kansas into a purple state. And I think it's critical that this election, we stand up tall and say, no, that's not going to happen. And it leads me back to my first point. It is critical that you, if it is outside of your comfort zone, some of you this will come very easy for. But for those of you that's out of your comfort zone, please encourage your family and your friends to get out and vote. It matters so much. It's critical. There's yard signs in the back. Do everything you can to support candidates up and down the ballot. This is the election. It matters more than ever. And I really do thank you for being here today and having me. And I'd be happy, Ray. First of all, give Ray and the leadership team a round of applause for putting this together. I think Ray's doing a great job with the party here. Our state party chair, Mike Kuckelman, is doing a great job with the state party. You have a lot to be proud of, I think, as Republicans in Kansas right now. I will take a few questions if you have any for me. Be happy to talk about anything you want to or any comments you might have. Mike.
I hate to ask, but I haven't seen it for a while. There's one burning issue you didn't touch on. Your opponent is Mayor of Topeka, and she's bragging that she has already started cutting funding to the Topeka Police Department. With all these people talking about defunding the police, Jake, where are you on police? I know you're not in favor of defunding, but kind of walk us through the comparison and contrast of what we look like, you versus her.
Yeah, it's critical that we stand up shoulder to shoulder next to law enforcement in this country who are putting their lives on the line, putting themselves in harm's way to make sure that we live in a civil society. And, you know, we've seen the tragedy in Minnesota that started all of this was awful. And is there a bad apple or two in law enforcement? Sure. Just like there is in every profession under the sun. And when we find a bad apple, let's deal with it. But we can't let a bad apple or two define an entire profession. These are wonderful people. And what I'm really concerned with are young people that are looking to go into law enforcement and now thinking differently about it because the way we see law enforcement vilified in the media every night. So I think it's critical that we aren't just neutral on this issue, but that we actually stand up and say something. The mayor of Topeka said that defund the police was a bad marketing term, but they've been doing it in Topeka for the last 2 years, before this was ever an issue that was being discussed. She is somebody that has been endorsed by Planned Parenthood and funded by Planned Parenthood. She is someone that at a mayor's conference at the federal level endorsed the Green New Deal, which would put agriculture, that would put the energy and the oil and gas industry out of business. It would shut down the Kansas economy and put millions of people out of work across this country. And she supports it. It makes complete sense that when you have someone like Nancy Pelosi putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into this congressional race, she's going to want something for that money. She's going to want something for that money. And so we have to make sure that we stand up and beat her. And when we have a nation that is $26.5 trillion in debt, on an annual basis we bring in about $3.5 trillion and spend $4.5 trillion. People are walking the halls of Congress talking about socialism, talking about infanticide. This isn't just a time to send Republicans to Washington, D.C., but we need people that are going to stand up and lead on these issues. And that's what I've done. I received an A+ from the NRA because I actually carried constitutional carry. I won the Pro-Life Hero Award from Kansans for Life because I carried Simon's Law that puts parents in charge of their children's health care decisions. I introduced welfare reform in this state that we got passed. I introduced property tax reform that we got passed. The point being is that we need people that are going to actively stand up and lead in Washington, D.C. to fix some of these problems. I assure you, Michelle de la Isla wants to take us down a path that we definitely don't want to go down. Another question or comment real quick? Yes, please.
How big is your district? How many counties?
Part of or all of 25 counties. Goes all the way to the Oklahoma border, to the Nebraska border. It is basically the three most eastern counties up, and expands in the north part, but obviously doesn't include Johnson County and Wyandotte County. Yeah, Ray.
Okay, as far as getting elected and then taking your position there in the House, what committees would you be looking at to hopefully hold?
That's a great question. A committee that I've been very interested in is Energy and Commerce. It covers a whole host of issues, ranging from obviously the energy sector, which is critical. It is a business-oriented community where we focus on making sure that the government is giving business a fair shake, whether it be through regulatory policy or otherwise. And so that's one. I've also said that it is vital that Kansas be represented on the Agriculture Committee. Typically, that seat is filled from the senator from Western Kansas, which Roger Marshall serves on now, and I think Tracy Mann would sure arm wrestle me to get on the Agriculture Committee now. But what I've said is that if ever we find ourselves in a place where we're not represented on the Agriculture Committee, I'll drop whatever I'm doing to make sure we are. And it hasn't been that long ago where we weren't represented. And so ag is a big deal as well. And so we'll see. The way it works is, I've just learned this recently, is that you have to fill out, as a freshman going in, you have to fill out your top 5 choices and then see what happens. Something like Energy Commerce is considered an A committee. And so you might not get it on in your first term. And so it's just, I'm learning a lot about the Washington's a little bit different than the State House in Topeka, I'm learning. But we're learning, and after Election Day, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you're well represented in the halls of Congress. Yeah, last question. Go ahead.
All right, you talked about the $26 trillion.
Yeah.
What's your plan to cut spending, reduce the growth, because that's what they love to do. You've got to have this constant growth of spending, irrespective of a plan every year, whatever that's called, plan every year. Put up that budget. It's irrelevant. We have a spending problem. So how do we go about, or do you have any ideas on how you can reduce the growth of spending? Because we're always going to have growth. Can we reduce it?
Yes. And the first step is to acknowledge the problem, which might sound obvious to us out here in Kansas, but in Washington, D.C., we have to be honest about this. Both parties have spent like drunken sailors. Now, the Democrats a little worse, but we've done it as a party as well. And it is critical that we rein this in. Suzanne and I have 4 young kids, and I think we are duty-bound, and you all behave like this in your personal life, I'm sure of it. We are all duty-bound to try to leave the campground better than we found it. And I think this is the big problem that we have to address. In the mid-90s, they were 1 vote shy of a balanced budget amendment in the United States Senate. And so I think that's critical. We have to pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution to make certain that we get this $1 trillion deficit every year back on track. And the way you go about doing this is twofold. Number one, you have to make sure that you aren't afraid to tackle excesses in government. And you have to be straight with the people that not every decision is going to be popular, not every decision is going to be easy. But that's what I'm prepared to do, and I've proven that I'm willing to do it. When I became, I'll tell you 2 quick stories. When I became state treasurer, we looked everywhere in the office to find a ways that we can provide you a better quality service and do it in a more efficient way. So we went about, we reduced the staff through attrition. We reduced our budget overall. We looked for ways to save. One example, we racked our own servers, our own computer servers, and it takes air-conditioned space. It can be expensive sometimes. It costs the state about $60,000 a year to do this. We moved our server up one flight of stairs to rack them with other state servers, and it cost less than $10,000 a year. When I was on the Transportation Committee in the state Senate, we had a senator come to us and say, hey, we need a stop sign with a flashing light at this intersection in my district. It's dangerous. And just in perfect government fashion, the committee, against my wishes, said, well, let's study it. And so we come back a year later, and in that year's time, there had been an accident at that intersection involving the senator's daughter. And again, KDOT came back and said, there's no need to have a flashing light there. It doesn't merit it. Well, I think that the people elected him. I think he knew what needed to be in his district better than bureaucrats in Topeka did. So the committee said, do it. We're going to build it. That's fine. And I'm so glad I asked the question at the end of the hearing. I said, how much does it cost to put the stop signs with the flashing lights? And they told me $3,000. And then I asked, how much did you spend on the study? And I still have the memo today. It was over $25,000 to study the intersection. My point being is that people that tell you there aren't places to cut, significant places to cut in government, they are not being honest with you. You can do it. The way Congress does it is, we are the appropriators. Congress is the appropriators. It is their job to hold department heads accountable and make certain that we find savings. It can absolutely be done. You saw Rand Paul introduce the penny plan a few years ago. Cut 1 penny out of every dollar in federal spending, and we could balance the budget in like 7 or 10 years, something like that. Now it has to be the 2 penny plan because they didn't pass it. But the point is that they said we can't do that. There's no way to cut 1 penny out of every dollar spent at the federal level. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so we have to be honest about it. We can't be afraid to look for ways to find it. And we have to tell voters that not every decision that gets us in balance is going to be popular. Thank you very much for having me. Do you have another question, Rick?
So would you propose a freeze on all spending?
No, it's more than that. You have to find savings in every department. You can't just free spending, and you need an economy that is growing. You need people out working. You need the economy to be opened up. You need, as I said earlier, you need regulations to be as low as possible. You need people to have the incentive to go work because they can keep more of their hard-earned money. That's how you get this done. But for too long now, we, as a nation, have sent people to Washington, D.C. that are completely focused on the next election. They never want to make a tough vote because they care more about protecting their power in Washington, D.C. than they do about getting something done at the end of the day. And that's what we have to change. Thank you all very much. God bless you, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Jake. Okay, so like I said before, there are signs there for Jake, and also Jake Nordis is here. Jake is his right-hand man up in this area, and Jake has campaign signs. So make sure you get some campaign signs. And I was going to say also that if you don't have campaign signs, you run out of campaign signs, just call me. They're supposed to be delivering some Marshall signs here to my house here sometime this week. And if we can get a few more Turner signs, it'd be great. Get them throughout the county. So thank you, Jake. I think Jake has another speaking engagement in Marysville tonight. Our next speaker is Dina Horst. Dina is on the board of education. She's been there for 2 terms, and this is her 3rd term that she's running for. I felt it important to ask Dina to come up and speak to the group because of our education system is so important to Kansas and to the conservative cause. We need to have a focus on education. We have been by far too lax on letting the liberal side of our schools take over our education system, and that's where we're seeing the left-wing side of things going into our colleges and universities. So with that, Dina? Okay.
Thank you very much for the invitation to come today. I don't know if you know that you are in District, whoops, I need to get further away evidently, in District 6. And that is the state board district that you are in. I live in Salina. To show you how large District 6 is, it starts in Donovan and Atchison County and goes west to Phillips and Brooks County, which is, if you don't know where that is, it's north of Hayes. So I drove most of 36 to get here. And I tell my colleagues I can see Nebraska from my district. And then it goes south to I-70. So I do not have Shawnee County, Douglas, or Wyandotte, or Johnson. So all the counties that are in between Hayes and Atchison and Donovan County, Jackson County, Brown County, there are 4 Senate districts. And one of those districts is Dennis Piles, who is your senator, your Kansas senator. So you have a sense of how big the area is. Jake was talking about having 25 counties. I have 24. So it's a large area with about 80 school districts. So I have a lot of fun running around observing what is happening. I thought you might like to know a little bit about what the school board is doing and what it has done. The school board doesn't select curriculum. That's the job of your local school board. And what we do is make sure that the standards are there's a recommended group of standards for each subject area. And that means that every 7 years, and this is by statute, we have to revisit each subject area. And what we do is we have a group of teachers look at those standards and decide if they are rigorous enough, also whether there's maybe too much rigor for the level that we've assigned a specific group of standards. So there may be some reduction in those cases. How many of you know that you can go on the KSDE, which is the Department of Education website, and find those standards? How many of you knew that? A few of you. You can do that. So if you have questions about something that's being taught in your school, and you wonder if it was something that the state board said needed to be taught, you can, or if there's something that's not taught that you think should be, go on that website and read them and find out if there's something missing. Or if you disagree with any of them, please let me know, because that's my job, is to listen to what you're thinking, because I'm your representative on that board. So please, I've got things like a brochure back there, and you can contact me that way, or I actually have a state board address too, and you're welcome to use it. And you just go under the state board and you'll find me. Anyway, another thing that we got to do this year was when COVID arrived. I think you probably have all heard of the continuous learning that was begun it was in March, basically, when it started. And there were some teachers that were asked to come up with a plan that could be used for the planning at each school district. And they did that in 48 hours. So you can be rest assured it wasn't as strong as it could have been, or maybe should have been. But we thought that surely we could get kids back in school. But, you know, we have a governor who decided that no, kids needed to stay at home and could not go to school. And so there was another group of teachers and administrators who just thought that was inappropriate. And so we needed to start planning immediately. So they began to plan, how can we change this in case this continues for a longer period of time than we'd like for it to. So there's a document called Navigating Change. It is also on the website. It is 1,000 pages plus in length, because it not only has learning ideas, in other words, lesson plans that teachers can log on to and use if they choose, but it also had operating ideas. How do you keep your kids safe? How do you keep your staff safe and healthy? So in that whole process, there were about 1,000 Kansans who were involved and in the planning, and those were teachers, school board and local school board members, state school board members were part of it, health officials from KDHE were there. But when we approved it in July and then sent it to the school districts, within hours, Governor Kelly had announced that she was going to delay school, the start of school. The legislature had given the state board the responsibility of determining whether that was appropriate or not. 5 of us voted yes, it was okay. 5 of us voted no. You have to have 6 to approve it. So I was one of those who voted no. So you were able to start school when your district thought they were ready to start. Otherwise, they would have had to start after Labor Day. So with that process, I was unopposed until till my vote. And there were some Democrats that just were really upset that I would vote against the governor. And so they found a gentleman to run a write-in campaign. He didn't get enough votes to actually be placed on the ballot, but I suspect you will see his name again on some sort of, either there'll be an ad on TV or something that will say I was a bad girl and I voted wrong. So you'll know why they're saying that. So I just wanted you to know that was the purpose. How many of you have children or grandchildren who go to private schools? The mask issue, what became a really controversial thing as well. And there were, I believe, a couple of legislators, and I'm not sure who they were, but they asked the Attorney General for an opinion whether school districts could make their own decisions. School districts have home rule. The state board or the local boards do. So that meant that constitutionally, also it's in statute, they can make decisions that affect them, and that's what I was basing my decision on. Was that I knew local districts from having been a state legislator previously. I knew they could make those kinds of decisions on their own. They didn't need the governor to make that decision. And those that had lots of COVID cases chose to not open until at least a week before Labor Day. And most of them, it was after Labor Day. But districts such as Sylvan Grove, which is in District 6, and has had absolutely 0 COVID cases, could open school when they thought they were ready. So I believe Seneca and also Sabetha opened also. But with the mask issue, the local districts could open because of home rule, or could decide what they wanted to do with masks. But according to the Attorney General, your private schools have no authority to make that decision from a statute or constitutional point of view. So they were supposed to go to their county commission. So I don't know whether your county commission decided that you should have masks, or I see some of you with them and some do not, so I'm assuming it's kind of up to the individual. But at any rate, that your local commission, your county commission, probably drove what goes on in your private school. But I'll tell you, your private schools could not have opened if the five of us had not voted no, because the governor's executive order included private schools as well. So I hope that I made a decision that at least the majority of you in this room are pleased that I made. But if you're not, please tell me. I got thousands of emails, literally thousands, with people on both sides of the fence. And I'm still getting them. So I've learned to respond as much as I possibly can to all of them. And please let me know if you have issues with anything that's going on. And if I don't know the answer, I will seek that answer out. And Ray asked me if I'd also say whether there were things I wanted to change. What I want to do is make sure that I'm representing you and that we are making certain that our students have the very best education in the state of Kansas that we can possibly offer them, so they can be the most successful people on earth. That's my goal. So it's like reach for the stars. And I'll be around until probably this is over. So if you have questions, please, or comments, please contact me, grab me, and visit with me. I do have some signs. I also have brochures, so you can read some more what I've got in mind. So anyway, thank you very much. I guess if they have questions, you probably, if they have questions, he said, I can answer them now.
Can you tell us about Common Core?
I'm going to.
Common Core that schools are using, but not all schools are, and what's the advantage of having it? And also, in favor of charter schools.
Common Core is something that if your districts are still working with Common Core, it's not because we told them to, now anyway. When I first was elected, that was on the table. And really wasn't on the table, it was being done. And there are some issues with it, but there also are some positives. I think I saw some when I was subbing, which I also do. I did see first graders being able to explain to a fellow first grader why they needed to subtract in that way. And that was kind of impressive because normally little children don't think that deeply, because what those children were doing was helping that child understand. And I'm not even sure as an adult I could have explained it as well as they did. So I did see some things occurring in that regard that I think was positive. But there were other issues with them, and sometimes I thought the rigor wasn't quite as high as it could have been. So those were some of the more negative components that went along with it. But so many individuals in the state were not pleased with Common Core. We kind of told districts that they no longer had to follow that component, and we stopped our connection with the national group that we were involved with. So from a state board point of view, we're looking more at what do the employers need? What are they seeing? That what are the schools that your graduates attend, if they do attend post-secondary? What are they seeing as something that may be a deficit? So those are the things that we're really encouraging districts to do, is to be more in contact with the employers of graduates, as well as being connected in some way with the schools, the post-secondary schools that your district graduates usually are attending. So I hope I sort of answered your question. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Is there any requirement in the state, or the state requirement, that a high school graduate knows how to balance a checkbook?
Yes, there actually is. There's a financial literacy courses that they're supposed to take, but you and I know, if you go back that far and remember, as a student, you didn't always listen to everything you were told. So that's part of our struggle. And but the education is there. In fact, it starts, I believe, in 7th and 8th grade. And then it is seen throughout their high school years, basically in math classes. So, and I believe in 7th and 8th grade it may be more in human ecology or home ec, because most of us knew it as being. Anyone else?
I was just wondering, what class is it that these young people are learning that America's a bad place to live in?
Do we have Kansas kids that are learning
I
that?
don't know about Kansas kids, but I know all over. We've got kids out there that think America is a bad place to live.
Because if we are here, that's a big issue from my point of view. Because I've seen the standards, and nowhere in the standards are we promoting that kind of an idea. We expect history to be taught, and we expect respect for our forefathers to be taught. So the other component there is you may want to make sure that your local school district, that local board, sees all that as important as well. When you're electing new board members, you need to probably ask that question also. Because that's something we don't promote, but that doesn't mean that a local district may not have someone who is promoting that kind of an idea. And it's also possible that you have a teacher who is doing that. So that's why you probably want to be very familiar with what's being taught in your schools.
So Dina, you mentioned before that you don't, the state school board does not set the curriculum, it's the school districts.
Right.
And as far as textbooks, it's the school districts that order textbooks.
Yes.
So in other words, the state school board doesn't have any jurisdiction on which textbooks they can get?
There may, if a district doesn't know all of the textbooks that are available, I'm sure that someone on the department level would share that information with them. But having been a teacher, I can tell you, I probably, even though I taught art, I probably received 5 or 6 different companies' solicitations for books every year. So I would find it difficult to believe that school districts didn't already know what was available. But we don't recommend anything. We would just tell them that this company has this textbook, and that let it be the decision of the district themselves. So.
One more question, okay, to make it clear, you do not have any jurisdiction over universities or colleges?
No, we do not. However, there is a group of state board members and the region's members of the region actually meet and try to kind of come up with something that is positive for Kansas education and for all Kansas graduates. So,
okay, again, you're not over the universities or colleges in the state, but if the high school kids are taking college courses, are you over that jurisdiction?
no. We are, well, in a sense we are, and in other ways we're not. We allow school districts to give credit to schools to students for taking a college credit course. But other than that, we we don't have anything to say about the content of those classes. Only the regents would. Okay. Thank you very much again for allowing me to come before you and share some thoughts. And please don't be shy. If you have questions or concerns, please let me know.
Thank you, Deanna. Appreciate you coming on here. And Deanna's in Salina, right? In Salina, so she had quite a drive up here today, and I'm very, yeah, I'm very pleased that she made the drive to come and talk to us. So, okay, our next speaker, Senator Dennis Pyle. Dennis is running on his 5th term as a state senator. Been doing a fantastic job there in our Kansas Senate. So with that, I'll just hand the mic over to Dennis.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everybody. Little explaining, we're late, but when I talked to Ray, I didn't realize that my wife had made a commitment that we were keeping grandkids overnight for one of my daughters celebrating their 5th anniversary. So we had 2 little granddaughters, and we had to wait till they got back. So we finally passed them back to Mom and Dad. And that's a good thing because we didn't have car seats and we wanted to bring them up here anyway. So we've been in a real predicament. But first off, I want to say thank you to all the committee people that are here. Through the years that I've served, you've helped us immensely. Put on events like this. You give opportunities for candidates to come and present their whatever, and you get signs out, you take care of things, and we appreciate that very much. And I'm not going to go without saying thank you to my wife. She's with me today. She's with me most of everything we do. She's my chief campaign assistant. She is not only that, but as I'm in the Senate, I'm a farmer. Most of you know that. And our children are pretty much raised. We have 4 of them married. Another one's going to get married. We have 9 grandchildren. Another one on the way. And we have 2 foster kids that are potentially going to get adopted. Pray for us on that. Pray for them because that's a rough road to hoe. But anyway, I want to thank her because, you know, the phones, the emails, the newspapers, everything that goes on while I'm in Topeka and the rest of the year, I don't have a farm secretary. I don't run a business where I have a secretary like my predecessor, Senator Pugh. His secretary told me when I was running, I walked into their office down in Wamego, and here were all the papers from the district laid out nicely. And she said, that's my job. I watch for letters to the editor. I watch for ads, anything that I have to see, what the editors or what the owners of the papers are publishing, what they're saying about Ed. Jennifer got that job. And unlike people in Washington, D.C., as a Kansas senator, when we leave Topeka, we have no staff, just so you know. Only leadership has staff. So I don't have somebody in Topeka sitting in an office. There's a phone there, and it just tells you basically, call me at home. People say, I can't call you at home. I want to bother you at home. That's what state senators and state representatives are for. So, but a big thank you to my wife, because she does all of this, and I don't pay her anything. So, and as you know, farm prices are depressed, so even if I wanted to, I couldn't right now. So, but kind of nice driving over here, seeing some of the harvest going. One of the things that I'm just going to hit on, you know, I do have an opponent, whether you know it or not, and I know that people have a choice when they go to vote, so they'll have to look at the differences. I was asked about the Herald, submit an answer, but they said, what separates you from your opponent? And I want to have so much fun with that, but I'll probably won't, given it's going to be printed in a paper. But, you know, he's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. You know, hey, if you don't know the difference with what's going on nationally, then you better wake up, get off the sleeping meds, because there's a real battle going on. The heart and soul of our country has been. It's the reason I got into this. I've been in it a long time. I asked Jerry Moran, if you think I've been in a long time running for my 5th term, how many of you know how long Jerry Moran's been in office? Nobody? That's interesting. Well, I was just with Jerry the other day, and we had a tour of the Holton Hospital expansion. And so I asked Jerry, I said, by the way, how long have you been there? How long did you serve in the Kansas Senate? 2 terms. And then he got elected to Congress. Any guesses how long he was in the House? 14 years. He's in his 2nd term, his 10th year as United States Senator. So 24 and 8, he's been at this for over 30 years. So I got a ways to go. I don't think I can tread water like he does, but he looked really refreshed and energetic. But anyway, long story short, we have had a fight in session this last year, as you all know, with the emergency declared and the governor's overreach. My phone rang off the wall. And so one of the main things that will differentiate between me and my opponent is that I'm going to be opposed to Governor Kelly on a lot of issues. He's not. He's not going to stand up to her. And I want to say thank you to Dina. Where'd she go? Did she take off? Thank you for your decision. I tried, before, when we were in special session, I tried to put local control at the school level, at the local level, and I was, well, let's just put it, the votes were there to put it with the state board, but the state board made the right decision and gave it to the local school boards, because I'm one that doesn't believe all the schools should have been closed down when they were. I think it should have been a decision that the locals made and did their own little checking and research and made their decisions. But we were effective in the fact that we gave counties the opportunity to do less stringent than what the governor imposed. So big difference there on how I would have, how I acted and how I voted versus how my opponent would have voted on that issue. But the governor's overreach has definitely been a battle. Not sure she's through. We will see coming up here. But the dynamics of the elections changed with Ruth Ginsburg's death. What was a battle for the U.S. Senate to take enough seats so that they could stop Trump nominees. You know, sometimes God intervenes in a big way, and he did. And now we'll see what happens. We'll see night and day who these Republicans are and whether they're going to back our president on his nomination or not. Because I'm one that believes he needs to make the nomination quick, he needs to get it done before the elections and get it over with. There are a lot of reasons for that. And the best response was President Trump's response that came out this afternoon, or this morning on Meet the Press or wherever he was at. Obama lost his midterm elections, and that's why he didn't have the votes, and that's why McConnell didn't run the votes to approve his nominee at the end of his term. They did not have the votes. It's that simple. We have the votes if Republicans will back our president's nominee. And he won in the midterm elections 2 years ago because he has the control of this U.S. Senate. So it's imperative that we keep that control of the U.S. Senate. This election, and I don't know, there's a battle over a seat here in Kansas, as you've already heard, I'm sure, from Congressman Marshall and his fight with Boyer. I serve with her. I know her. She's every bit as left-wing as our governor, our New York governor. How many of you knew she was from New York when she was running? Very, very few people. Poor messaging, and unfortunately we have that to deal with now. I challenged some folks, Republicans in Wamego here a while back, that we see a lot going on in our country. We see a lot of things happening. And I guess I would I challenge them to ask themselves, do you know what you believe? Do you know what you believe? Do you know why you differ with the actions of these people out here that are causing riots, that are attacking our law enforcement, that are all that's going on? You've seen it in the media. But do you know what you believe? And the other question I asked them is, do you know what you don't believe? Because it's important. You know, we go into debate on the floor of the Senate or in a campaign, and you have to study both sides to really be an effective debater. And it's time for us to wake up and know not only what we believe, but why we don't believe what they believe. The Marxist teachings that are being propagated in our country today have been pushed and pushed for the last 50 years. There's a reason we're where we're at today, folks. There's a book, and I told them about it. It's called 10 Books That Screwed Up the World, and 5 more that didn't help. And it's a hardback. You got to pay for it. But it talks about what Nietzsche believed. It talks about Mein Kampf, Hitler's book. Tells you what he believed. There's others in there. There's 10 of them. Marx's. Anyway, if you want to know what these people believe that are trying to take power in our country and have been working to do it for a long time and have been very, very successful, if you look at what they've done with our courts. So it's time. We need to know our history. We need to know where we've come from, where we're going. We need to know the other side's beliefs so that we can effectively debate them, and we can see when they put a message out there what their message is. I can get real passionate about babies. I had 6 girls, and I was there for every one of them. And there's no way that you would ever be able to terminate one of them little babies in my life's womb without me doing something awful to you. And if you think you're going to terminate them after they're born, and a man just threw a little 2-year-old girl out of a car on the interstate yesterday. He was 30 years old. He threw her out the window, killed her. They don't know what they believe. That's the problem. They have no grounding. So the question is, who taught them what they don't believe or believe? And who taught us what we believe and don't believe? Because it's time we examined it. And we need to start basing what we're learning and what we're reading and studying it. Because, folks, it's more important today than it's ever been to elect freedom-loving, constitutional-minded, God-loving people to every level of elected office. Every level. Because there is definitely a movement in this country like we've never seen before. And I will just share with you, it was a hard decision to run again because I've got a family. I've got 9 grandkids. And I want to do a little bit of traveling and do some things. But I did talk to all 3 of my representatives, who are, by the way, now Republican. When I first ran, that was not the case. All 3 of them were Democrats. If you remember Bruce Larkin, Jerry Henry, and Galen Wyland, you know what I'm talking about. And we have changed Northeast Kansas. Not just me, it's you. People have started to move Republican up here. We have 3 Republican representatives in this district. 4th, if you count to my west in Marshall County. That's an open seat this year. It's contested, so we'll see if it, but I'm hoping it stays Republican. So keep up the good work. Join us in our fight. We didn't raise any money for a couple of years for the campaign because we were running for Congress 2 years ago. But stay in the battle. Hold your head up. Victory's ours. We're going to win this election. Our president's going to win this election. I really believe that. I really believe President Trump is going to lead us for another 4 years, and I'm praying that he has the U.S. Senate's backing so that he has the power. Because I know Clarence Thomas is getting older, and he too probably wants to get off the court and knows he'll be replaced. So You know, it could very easily go 6-3 and then go back 5-4, and it could go the other way. So there's a lot of work and a lot is always, and you know, John Quincy Adams said it best, duty is ours, results are God's. We've got to, yeah, you know, it's like old football, we always had to push them stinking pads. We always wondered what it was for. Well, they got you ready to push the guys on the line. So stay in there. Thank you. Are we taking any questions, or are we? I don't know your time.
Questions for Senator Fox?
Senator, I'm not sure you're aware of this or have been privy to this conversation yet, but recently the governor stood up in a meeting with the Kansas Sheriff's Association's executive director and board and explained to them that all law enforcement in Kansas is biased and racial, and is she going to do something about that?
No.
We're going to be calling upon you to help with that.
Okay.
I mean, she's appointed a board that is led by an ACLU member out of Wichita. Your thoughts on this, and like I said, I don't want to hang you out. You don't know have ever heard it, but.
Well, this is the first time I've heard of it, but I will tell you this, it doesn't surprise me. You know, the governor's overreach.
The last time I checked, I never met her, so.
She'll be put in check when we get back in session, which is one of the questions I would like to ask you. It will deal with this. If you're aware of the Kansas Constitution, we can't get the legislature back in session without 2/3 of us petitioning to go in, or the governor called us in, and she's not going to do that. And there are a lot of us who want to see. I'm on the Kansas Emergency Management Special Committee to examine the Emergency Management Act. So one of the things I want to see, I'd like to know if you support this or not, but I would like to see that when there's an emergency declaration, that we change that restriction so that the legislature can convene and not be so difficult to get us back into session. Because to me, if she's going to do something such as this, or extend another emergency where she shuts down businesses for 3 weeks, we need to, within a week's time, be able to, we're calling us back into session so that we can deal with these issues, and your elected officials are all there. That was one of the frustrations I know Randy shared with me, Representative Garber, was that we were not there after we left, and people said, do something, do something. It's very difficult to do something when you're not in session and you can't introduce legislation and you can't get votes to change things. When we went back to special session and made those changes, the governor was happy with the changes. I didn't think it went far enough, voted against it. But yeah, we'll be dealing with that issue, I'm sure, come January, if we don't get a chance to deal with it sooner. The best thing to do would be get us back in there, even for just a few days, to deal with this kind of stuff. Because we expected it, you know. When they put the deadline in there, September 5th, 15th, there were a lot of us that opposed that. And by the way, the House of Representatives, many of you don't know this, but they voted for a resolution before we left in March to give her full power until next session. It passed unanimously on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, any wonder? I got a call that weekend on a Sunday night saying, did you see what the House passed? I said, I haven't read it. So I went and read it. And Monday morning, the revisor already had 3 amendments drafted to that resolution. One was that she could, the governor, whoever that would be, under emergency declaration, cannot impede or affect or any way restrain the sales or the action of ammunition, firearms, etc., Second Amendment stuff. The second one was to put it into local control, try to make some of that. And anyway, all of those amendments, the majority leader took one of them, that all was discussed in leadership and ran through, and in all 3 of them restricted her. And then you saw when the governor closed down the churches, what she did. It went to court. It was going to court. And then she backed up. And so I can't remember all the details as good as I'd like to, but I do know that we fixed it to some degree. I wanted the LCC in charge, which is the legislative leaders, And there were other leaders down there that wanted the finance council in charge, and they won out. The finance council is in charge, but you need to understand the difference. The finance council is chaired by the governor. And she could delay calling that meeting to the hour, whatever that is. I think she has a couple weeks to do it. But with the LCC, it would have been the legislative leadership that would have been able to call a meeting right now and interfere and stop the emergency declaration or whatever she's doing. Wherever you're at on COVID, there's just so many opinions on how we should be dealing with that right now. So it's hard as a senator to, some people think we should all be still wearing masks. In a Republican event like this, I can tell you, most of them, it's like this. Most people are not wearing a mask. But when I walk into committee meetings in Topeka, most people are wearing a mask. So there's just a difference in where you're at. Plus, the Capitol is under a mask order mandate with the governor. So, to answer your question, we certainly don't agree with the governor. I don't. So
Dennis?
Okay, on a situation like that, can we as the public, I mean, I understand you are our leaders, and so much you can do, but we as a public, can we get involved in that in letters and emails? And I mean, do they do any good for us as a Republican group or whatever to stymie things like this?
I think it does good. I do. I would, when I was called by one of my representatives, and he says, I'm telling people there's nothing we can do. And I said, no, don't tell them that. Tell them to call the governor's office. Contact the governor's office. Give them the chief of staff's number. Give them the chief of staff's email so that you can tell them and let them know there's people out here that don't agree. But be polite, be civil. They're not going to, do it in a way that they will hopefully reach out to you. I was trying to solve a lot of problems. I had people with unemployment, more so towards the southeast part of my district. I had a lot of unemployment issues, and I just got an email last week from Bush Mize with some of the things that went on. People that were not even unemployed, someone had filed a claim for unemployment in their name. And yet they had sent the department communications saying this is not right. And we've got a lot of problems in the Department of Labor that need to be worked out. But yes, by all means, contact them. And if you need their contact information, I'm glad to share the chief's email. He probably won't like it, but put that out there.
I just feel our law enforcement has been hung out there dry by themselves. I mean, and it's going to take the public, the people, to stand up, and say enough is enough. And if we don't do that, I don't know what's going to happen, because it's going to come in our area here. We are fortunate, very fortunate, and it's a beautiful place to live. And our law enforcement has been great, and I don't want to see it spill out into our community, our small communities. We don't want to see it out there.
I will remind you, since we're talking about some of this stuff, that the governor only won. She won with 48% of the vote. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. They don't like to be reminded of that, by the way. But she did not win with a majority of the Kansas people. She won the most votes in that three-way or four-way race, but she did not receive 50% plus one. So she's going to get beat in 2 years. I believe that. But we've got a lot of work to do in the next 2 years, and we've got to get through this COVID crisis and get this all straightened out. Kathy?
What you said is being taught. I just listened to something the other day from an organization called Heritage Action here in Washington, D.C. And they said that this training has been going on in the federal offices and the state offices for years. And President Trump just found out about it and says that has to stop now. So if it's being continued, he wants to hear it, and it needs to stop. And I have more information on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will add, I don't know whether any of you have seen the articles. I got an audit, which I have worked for a long time to get an audit about dues and fees and lobbying costs that you, the taxpayer, are funding. And I could not get answers. I would send out open records requests to municipalities, governmental entities, and very few would respond. And so we got an audit approved a year or so ago. It's been in the works. They came out the other day with the results and released it to the post-audit committee. Only 22.5% of governmental entities responded to post-audit. Now, these are the folks that work for the legislature. It's called the legislative post-audit. They have authority to come in and examine government books. And when they send you a request for information and data, you should respond. Only 22.5% of the governmental entities that were asked responded. So the swamp's deep, and it's deep in Kansas.
Is there any consequence to not responding?
No.
So what's the point of
That's
responding?
part of the thing we're looking at. I had a representative call me tonight because I got 4 ideas for legislation because of your audit. And I said, well, I've got some myself. Because we don't have transparency. That's one. We don't have any consequences to not complying. We don't have, I can go on, but there are several things. Ohio and Louisiana just followed. Ohio has basically what they call checkbook online, where the governmental entities have to post what they're writing their checks for and what their receipts are, and you can see it all. It'd be easy for audit to go in and pull it, wouldn't it? Only one state in the union. Louisiana passed something. I haven't had a chance to look at theirs, but they said it's going to take 3 years to implement it.
Oh, right.
But I want to see what their legislation is, because that will definitely be some legislation that I'm working, because I want to see more transparency. And I will just tell you this. This will be the first time I've publicly talked about this, but I'm on the KEMA, the Emergency Management Act Special Committee. And I asked a question in there, it's probably been 3 weeks ago. And because if you read in the papers, you saw where the Adjutant General came in and he basically was questioned because he showed us in a tour that they had received garbage bags with holes in the shoulders, holes up here, and those were being promoted as gowns. Okay? They were just sitting on them. They also had received many masks that were supposed to qualify for COVID that they can't use. They'll qualify for surgical masks, but they won't qualify for being distributed as PPE for COVID. So the question was asked, we would like to see a list of all the products that you have received and or distributed. We'd like to see a list of all those entities that have requested those products and the amounts they've received and the amounts they've sent back. So we haven't gotten a response. So a week ago, I get an email from the legislative staffer on the committee and said they don't want to comply with the question. So, and these emails can be public because they're correspondence, but so I replied back. Jennifer knows my frustrations with this. So I replied back. I said, because you got the researcher, number one, telling you there's been no correspondence, but they won't. So I've got to verify, number one, that that's true. So I asked the question. I said, I need to see all correspondence between the research staff and the Adjutant General's office. And I got that. And the Adjutant General office, long story short of the story is, we've been told by the governor to not respond to these questions. And I can prove that. What would you do? And then you wonder why legislators work so hard and seemingly tread water. It's getting deep. And and we all saw what happened to President Trump. 4 years. Is it a wonder he got anything done? I mean, really, I look at how deep it is and how big government has become. And it's time for the pendulum to swing the other way. It's time that we get back our government. And that we start saying enough is enough, and we start fixing some things. And number one, we need transparency, and we need it desperately, and I need full transparency. We don't need, and I know, that's going to affect schools. Oh, Pyle, you're against schools. No, I'm not. But I want to see the checkbook. I want to see the county. I want to see the township. I don't care what government entity you are, whether the adjutant general, who you are. If there's a security reason, fine. We'll figure that out. But let's see it. Let's see where that money's going. Because you know what? The reporter asked me when that audit broke, if I was, how did he say that? Wanted to know how I felt about the fact that there wasn't any more compliance. And I said, well, maybe it just brings to the point that maybe we need to ask what the benefits are to being members of those associations. How many travel, how many trips, how many, you know, what else are taxpayers paying for besides the dues and the membership fees and paying for, I have 20-some school districts in my district, and not a one of them that I'm aware of pays for a direct lobbyist. But I can show you the 5 counties where most of the direct lobbyists that set in the education can come from. And some of them are getting paid $40,000, $50,000 for a session to come up there and advocate for their specific school district. Now tell me that's balanced with my districts. You know, they come to me or Randy or Francis or Dr. Epley and say, here's what we need. And we walk in and talk to our appropriations people, and they're getting bombarded by 50 lobbyists, plus the legislators from those 5 counties. So it's a battle. I always talk about the rural-urban issues, and that's one of them. And that's one that I see definitely in the committees I'm in, because I can see them sitting right there in the gallery advocating, and they're in Ways and Means. And you're paying for it. It's taxpayer-funded lobbying. It's one of the #1 issues that I've worked against for 4 years. And somebody asked me last year if I was going to put a sign on my door that said, no taxpayer lobbying allowed. Haven't quite gotten that far, but got to keep the communication open with everybody. But at the same time, it'd be nice to have 90% compliance with that audit request so that we could actually see how many dollars were being spent. And anyway, any other questions real quick?
Would you want to hit on Medicaid expansion?
Well, I'm not going to support it if that's what you want, and I can tell you why. Okay? Number one, when it started out, it was 100% the federal government was going to cover it. Okay? And my opponent's going to support it. He's already said that in his press release. And the governor wants it. So if the federal government already has dropped it twice to a 90-10 match, we have no assurance that that's going to stay there. Okay? So the state, once you adopt that policy, you're kind of on the line for whatever. If they go 50-50, you're going to have to come up with all that money. The other couple questions I asked, number one is, where's that 10% match coming from? It's got to come from somewhere. I mean, you're going to pull down 90% of federal dollars, but that's obligated, okay? So you've got to come up with a 10% match as a state. Where are you going to get it? Are you going to raise taxes? Nobody seems to want to answer that question. And if so, which taxes? Or, instead of raising taxes, you're going to take it out of current revenue? Then where are you going to take it from? You're going to take it from the schools? You're going to take it from the disability groups? Because those are the 2 biggest. Where are you going to get it? It's 10%. It's quite a sum of money. Where are you going to get the money? And no one will answer those questions for me. No one will say, we're going to raise sales tax and we're going to dedicate it to Medicaid expansion. And if you can get my opponent to say where he's going to get the money, I'd like to hear him say it. Because he won't answer that. He'll just say he's going to support Medicaid expansion. More government.
Raise taxes.
Is that what you want to do?
No, that's the only answer they have.
Yeah.
Raise taxes, because we don't have enough taxes out here yet.
Yeah. And you know where I'm at. Look, I have always told people when I ran, I'm pro-life. Okay? if you didn't get to see what happened and what I was able to do on the pro-life amendment last year, I will tell you, I was getting beat up by pro-life groups. Because, yes, this is how quickly they can turn on you, all right? And you know why? Okay, I got to back up and give you some history. Do you remember the marriage amendment? 2005, I campaigned in 2004 when I was first elected to the state senate that I would help pass a marriage amendment. And we pulled teeth to get a marriage amendment to pass the Senate and the House with 2/3 vote, which it has to have to go to the people, okay? But to do so, we had to put it on an April ballot. I had 2 pro-life colleagues that were on the Democrat side of the aisle, and they would absolutely not join, and we needed them to get to 27. They would not vote for anything other than an April ballot. If you put it on the August primary or the November election, no. Take the politics out of it, put it before the people, and see if it'll pass. And that's what we did. But more importantly than just the April ballot, the language has to say a special election. I chaired elections, know a little bit about elections, but it has to say special election. If it doesn't, it goes to Republicans and to Democrats. What are you going to do with all the independents and reforms and the other parties that are out there on the ticket? They either got to come in and join your party or they can't vote on that issue. It has to say special election language. So, I'm in committee. I don't remember what committee that was. The Life Amendment came through our committee, and I spoke up. This is where I got in trouble. All right, I'm talking too much today. Anyway, but the Life Amendment came in, we had our hearings, and I said, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. You know, I'm going to vote for this, but this is not going to stand up. It won't hold constitutional muster because it doesn't have special election language in it. I walked out of that committee room and I was met right away by the Catholic Coalition, KFL, you know the groups, Ray, you know them. Senator, are you trying to defeat our bill? No, I'm trying to help it. I want to help it pass. The leadership wasn't going to let anybody get any credit on this bill, okay? And their response was, our lawyers have vetted this. This is the language it has to be. Fine, I'll vote for it. We'll kick it out of committee. Gets to the Senate floor. Go read what National Right to Life had to say about Dennis Pyle's amendment on the floor of the Senate. Now, if I sat back and watched, as Senator Miller mutilated our carrier of the bill with the very arguments that I'm saying here needed to be done. And they were losing. Senator Rucker was carrying the bill. And I went up to Rucker and I said, you see what I mean? He goes, I do. I'll talk to Susan, President of the Senate. I said, I'll get the amendment drafted. And my amendment went on a voice vote. Because that allows everyone in the state of Kansas that's registered to vote on the amendment. Okay? They were afraid we would get into an April date, which, by the way, I think if we would have got to put it on the ballot if we'd have gone with a different date. But there were people that wanted it on the primary. But no, I went from being a bad guy to being a good guy. It's that's how it is in this arena. And people can take what you say on camera, use it against you, take a clip, put your words out there, use it against you. We've got to get wise, and we've got to listen to what's being said and how it's being said. But I will stop with this. Just remember, President Trump had the perfect argument today. Obama lost his midterm elections and lost the power in the Senate, and he did not have the votes to get his conferee confirmed. We do. We won the midterms 2 years ago. We empowered our president to do what we want him to do, and that is to appoint good, solid, conservative, freedom-loving, constitutional-minded judges. And I need your help in this campaign. Help me to go back to Topeka to do what I begrudgingly sometimes have to do. But I will promise I still am pro-life, I'm pro-gun, and I'm not going to raise your taxes. Now, that's getting harder to do. I will tell you this real quick, Ray, because not only are the Democrats, but the Republicans are getting really good at bundling and throwing a tax increase in with a tax cut and calling it a tax cut. And you get in trouble because people like me, you know, I've been there long enough, I know how to divide a bill if I get the opportunity, so that I can at least vote on both parts. But it's getting worse, and needs to stop. Anyway, thank you all. We need your prayers, we need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I tell you what, you see why it is so important to have good leadership in our state house. And we want to thank Senator Bile for his years of service, and we want to elect him again for another term. Absolutely. Right now, I want to see if the rest of you guys, if you want to take a break, a 5-minute break, to go to the restrooms, to get some tea and coffee. And also, we have a table over to the south wall there that has hats and information and things that's for a silent auction. In other words, you can go up there and put a bid in and get anything you want up there at the table there. But if we could take just a quick 5-minute break and get something to drink and go to the restroom, then we'll be back, and our Sheriff, Rich Vernon, will be our next speaker. Thank you. Okay, if we can all take the seats again, we can just get started. And if anybody showed up late, they want to find a seat and kind of get things rolling here.
You didn't bring Bruce with you?
Okay, if we can take our seats, guys, I'd like to get started again.
I just need
And they got the pork chops on the grill. I want to make sure we don't burn them out there by the time we get done speaking. Yeah, there you go.
Do I need a mic? You guys hear me?
Use a mic. Somebody use a mic. If we could sit down, please. As you know, this spring for the primary election, we have, of course, videos of candidates. The candidates that spoke earlier were unopposed. Well, I guess Congressman Marshall took the primaries, and so did Latour. But our other officials, we had them on videotape, and we videotaped them. Rich was one of the candidates that we videotaped, even though he doesn't have an opponent in the election. He did a good job, and I thought it'd be nice if he would just give a brief talk on his job, his role, and what he's seen in our law enforcement in Nemaha County. So, Rich? Sure.
Thank you. This is my fifth electoral season, I think is what you would call it. And what I've learned in 5 seasons is I highly recommend running unopposed. It works out really well. I like it. And in all reality, it lets me focus on just my job. When I was first starting to do that, 38 years old when I got elected to the sheriff position, and I told my dad, I said, I really don't know if I want to do this shit yet. Because it can be kind of short-lived. I mean, you're basically going into a popularity carrying contest every 4 years. And my dad he sat there and looked at me in the eyes. He said, "You do your job and let the rest of it'll work out." And that's the way I've looked at it the entire time that I've been here with the sheriff's office. This is my 30th year representing law enforcement in Nemaha County. It's been a wild ride, I can tell you. It's been obviously a lot of changes over the years. From being out in the middle of nowhere all night long by yourself to where we try to run at least 2 law enforcement officers at any one given time in the county. It's never a good feeling when you holler for help and there's no one there to help you, whether you be the cop or someone else that's out there. So we try to do that. That has increased quite a bit. We've seen quite a few changes. Some of them were voluntary, some of them not so much voluntarily. Legislative to change some issues. Now, you heard me talking with Senator Pyle there just a little bit ago about the governor hasn't been very kind, or at least not in her words and deeds to law enforcement. Give you a little background on that. I didn't really want to drop that on the senator, but I didn't know whether he had heard about it yet. The senator, in her wisdom, the governor, in her wisdom, has decided that all law enforcement in the state of Kansas are racist. Now, I've never met the governor. I don't know how she can say that I'm racist, but for a number of years now, we've had to take racial and biased policing classes. We've all done them. I mean, we're all biased about something somewhere in life. I mean, it's for whatever reason we are. We have to be aware of those biases and make sure they're not making decisions for us. And that's basically what we try to, we're taught these classes. And just because I don't like something particularly doesn't mean that I can't take a look at it and make a good decision based on what the facts are. But anyway, that's what they've done, and she's put a committee together, and they're, I guess, going to come up with some new rules for cops to work by. So I'm not sure what those will be. We'll see how that all turns out. But I can tell you, I don't know how long we've been going through this craziness in the country right now. But I can tell you that in the last 5 to 6 months, I've had more thank yous. Thanks for what you do. We appreciate you. nothing but good things to be said about local law enforcement right here for us. Now, I understand not everybody's happy with us all the time. I understand that. When you get a speeding ticket, that's not a, you're not happy with us. I appreciate that. But for the overall basic, I have never had in my 30-year career, I have never had the show of output and support that we have now. It is great, and I appreciate it. That's because of all you. We do our jobs, we try hard. Do we always make the right decision? No. I'm sure there's some people that would say that we don't make the right decisions at a point in time. We try to focus on what needs to be focused on. And if other things, we do what we can when we can. So, does anybody have any questions for me? I don't want to stand between you and a pork chop. I had a question a little bit ago. Go ahead. Yes.
Why is it that a Texas company is in charge of the Kansas jail and prison?
Why is it that what? Excuse me, what? That a Texas company?
Is in charge of the Kansas jail?
Are you talking like my medical staff? Is that what you're talking about? Or the private jails that are happening down in Kansas City?
Talking about your jail here.
Uh-huh.
Somebody's in jail, and I want them to make a phone call. They're going to pay this Texas company for I can call.
Okay, so there's a limited number of people that provide services for jails. Okay? So the phone service for a jail is very, very particular. If we don't want you to call anybody, you don't get to call anybody. You know what I'm saying? So the phone system has to be set up that way. To my knowledge, there's no Kansas-based phone company that deals with that for jails. They don't just have, like you have at home, like you have a normal phone that you dial out a number and go. That's not what they have. They have to use phone cards. Everything that they say on that phone is recorded. They're told that it's recorded right up front. And so if, let's just say someone calls and tries to tamper with a witness or something from the jail, we have that recording and we know what's going on with it. We can provide that to the attorneys. But I understand what you're saying. Why wouldn't we support something local? The biggest reason there is because there isn't anybody local to provide that service. Just, my company that we use is called ACH. It's for healthcare. Now, major events actually go through the hospital out here, but the hospital and I sat down and said, we really don't like your inmates sitting in our lobby. And we really don't like taking our inmates out of the jail to go to the hospital. That's a security risk in some cases. So what we did is we worked with a company called ACH who brings doctors and nurses into our facility and does the everyday stuff. If they've got headaches or they've got stomach aches or cramps or dental or whatever the case may be, they'll come into jail. Now, if they have an emergency, then they still go to the hospital if we need be, and we'll bring an ambulance in, we'll send an officer with the ambulance, we'll do all that normal stuff. But it was a way to try to solve a couple of problems that we were both having and make it work out. I don't like everything about it, but I do like the ability in order to do that. I had a question in the back of the room just a little bit ago about how many bad cops are there in the United States of America? I don't know. I hope there aren't very many. But I don't know of any study that says how many cops get in trouble we try to hire good people. We try to work with people and make sure they're making good decisions and decisions made towards the good of benefit of the people. But bad things can happen. This whole thing, this guy that started this whole thing up in Minneapolis where he knelt on, that's what they're using for a catalyst anyway, that he knelt on the guy's neck, the guy dies. By the way, he was full of fentanyl. You don't hear that on TV. But he was full of fentanyl, and he dies. And the guy that knelt on his neck, that by the way, is a maneuver that's taught to police. What it's designed to do is actually hold their head still while we're putting cuffs on them so they don't bite you. You're not supposed to be on them for 5 to 7 minutes. You're not supposed to do that. And in any training, we tell them that. But do you know where that guy's at? He's in jail. And that's where he should be at this state of the game. So he will have his day in court. If we do something wrong, we're not anybody special. If we do something wrong, we need to be held accountable just like anybody else. And that's the part that everybody seems to be missing. If we break the law, God forbid, or do something in a manner that's not kosher with the way the rest of the world works, then we need to be held accountable, and that's what we do. That's the way the world should work. That's what's happening there. I'm not sure why all of a sudden this blew up. I think maybe there might have been something else behind that, maybe just a little bit. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
How are you doing on funding for the sheriff's department? Are your budget still?
I got all the money I ever wanted. Well, I mean, you know, we had a what I would call a major jump when we went from the old jail to the new jail. I told them when we did it that I would try to use the staff that I had in the old jail, which was like 2,200 square feet, to take care of the 15,000 square feet that we moved into. And I also was very open to them up front, as I don't think I can do it. So we have added a little bit there. So since 2014, there has been a little bit of bump in the deal. I usually give back somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $100,000 to the commissioners each year. That's what I do. Now we have a great system, in my opinion, worked out. I asked for my budget. I usually takes me about a week to really put the pencil to it. I mean, I get a kick out of my number. By the way, if you ever want mine, I'm Senator. If you would like mine, I'll be glad to give them to you. We have a kick out every month of exactly where I spend every dollar. And I use those as I go through. We usually July. They want the budgets in July or August for the next year, but oftentimes I don't know what they're going to give for raises, so that's very difficult to do. So because that's the biggest portion of my budget is the people that work for me. So anyway, so I give them a budget, and they say, okay, you know, or no, you don't get that much, or you know, I've had them cut a few thousand out of it before, and I've had them add a few thousand before. And then at the end of the year, you know, it seems like in some agencies, especially at the state and federal level, if you don't spend every single dollar that you had this year in a budget, they're going to cut next year's budget. So they go out at the end and they go, oh man, we need that, we need that, we need that. You know, no. At the end of the year, I do everything until December 31st, just like anything else, and whatever's left goes right back to them. And like I said, it usually averages 30 to 100,000. Never been over budget. Don't want to be, because then I got to file an amended budget, and you guys get to make fun of me because I went over budget, and I don't want to do that. So that's where I fall with that. Yeah.
I have a very serious question for you.
Okay.
Let's say Trump loses, Kelly stays in, Kyle loses, so all the people who aren't supportive of Second Amendment rights tell you to go out and start rounding up the people who
No.
their Second Amendment rights.
I won't do it. They can fire me, but I won't do it. As far as I know, the only people that can fire me are you guys. Now, I can maybe get into trouble. I can be held up in contempt of court. I mean, I don't see, there are probably some places, and a lot of this gets into, you guys know what a red flag warning is? Some states have red flag warnings, where they want us to go out and take guns from quote-unquote mentally unstable people. Kansas doesn't have that right now, by the way, and hopefully we won't, by the way. But, so let's just say, just for, you and I are married, we're not getting along, and I've made you mad, and you decide you're leaving, and you go to the cops and say, that guy's crazy, he's got guns all over his house, I want to file a report on that. So all of a sudden you file that report, now they're going to send the sheriff out in some states to take your guns. And that's not going to happen. No, I mean, it's just, there's people fighting it all over the place. Now, it does happen in some cases where they've had a chance to represent themselves. Now, what I want to say, there have been some courts in places that have said, Sheriff, he's had an opportunity to come in and give his side, she's given her side, and I believe he is mentally unstable. And I want you to go get his guns. I wouldn't say I wouldn't do that, depending on what the scenario was, but the only way, in my opinion, the only way they could ever go after people's guns in the country is for us at the local level to do it, and I don't think you can, I mean, I know a lot of sheriffs, and I don't think very, very, very few would ever do that. Time? All right.
Wait a minute, Rich, before you leave. Ann Mosier has a plaque, or has something for you here. I'll let her explain it to you.
Hi, Rich. This is from the Kansas Federation of Republican Women. We had a meeting yesterday, and they would like to present you with this poster that says 2020 Kansas Federation of Republican Women backs the blue. Thank you for your service. And we all signed it, and it's from 5 districts in the state of Kansas.
Thank you very much.
And so we are for the law enforcement, 100%.
You bet. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And like I said, you know, not Ray, I'll just jump right out here real quick. Thank you guys for allowing us to do our jobs and being supportive of us around here, because you know we're damn good and well that places in the country right now are not that way. I can't imagine for a second being a young cop in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and going to work every day and knowing that everybody you dealt with is going to freaking hate you. I can't imagine that for a second. So, anyway, have a good night. God bless.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Our next speaker is he's running for county commissioner, and he is not really new to politics, but he's new to politics here in Nemaha County. Dylan Kahn won the primary in August, and I'll just let Dylan talk a little bit about himself and his family. He has a business just north between Seneca and Byrne here, and I'll let Dylan go ahead and tell you what he's going to do.
Thanks, Ray. Hey, good evening. How's everybody doing? You guys hungry? I just want to give thanks for everybody for showing up, giving me an opportunity to meet you all. Ray and Dor, thank you for all the hard work. I know this isn't easy. And then I want to give thanks to the people who helped us campaign. We went out in July and 1st of August, knocked on doors, meet and greet. We had really good receptions. So for the people that helped, thank you. We won that primary, I believe, by almost 75%. So quite the majority. I'll try and make this short. I'm not the best guy in speaking, but I do like to have a conversation. I can buy it honestly. My grandfather was known for following you out the driveway, hanging on your car door window. So we went out campaigning, and we came across a common theme with people in Nemaha County. And what I found out was we have problems with the roads. That's the first thing, right? So if I get elected, I plan on fixing the roads and doing it right. It seems like every year we're fixing the same road, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Sorry about that. So what I want to do is make a plan to a proposal to actually pave our county roads and look what that cost is going to be to actually pave all the county-owned roads. As you know, over time, equipment has changed. In the farming industry, equipment has changed. You used to have a single axle grain truck that hauled 300 bushels roughly, right? Now we got semis that are hauling 1,200 bushels. And then I think some guys like to see if they can get 15, maybe 16 in it. But it puts more stress on the roads, right? And so our roads don't last near as long. They have more issues. And so I'd like to put a plan out there to actually pave a road right the first time. And then let everybody decide if that's what they want to spend their money on. Second thing, I want to let you know I will be a strong supporter of constitutional rights. This whole COVID issue is something that brought in a lot to help motivate me to get into office again. Where I stand on that, especially the mask mandate, I will give the commissioners a round of applause for not forcing masks on us in the county. I do not
support a mask mandate. I'm for individual rights. So, you know, if you want to wear a mask, please do. If you don't, please don't. It's up to you and your family what's best for you and your health. I would never impose something on you to do such a thing. Now, as far as businesses go, that's something that strikes home pretty hard with me. Because I never feel like the government should have the right to dictate who's essential and who's not essential. Government does not have the right to pick winners and losers. So if Governor Kelly would ask me to shut down the businesses in my county, I would tell her no. I would say, you can keep your business open. You have a right to earn a living. Now, the individuals, if you don't feel comfortable patronizing that business, please don't. If you don't want to go out to a restaurant and eat, then don't. If you don't feel comfortable going inside, but you want to sit outside, please sit outside. If you want takeout, please get takeout. But don't take that right from that business owner not to earn a living. And matter of fact, we still have that right today, where we've still got businesses closed that may not ever come back. And as far as a countywide, that's big, because one of the big things taxes or businesses give is taxes. And a lot of it is in sales tax. So if you take a business and it closed in a 10-year amount of time, how much sales tax revenue do we lose? That's quite a bit. I can tell you my business, I pay thousands of dollars a month to the state of Kansas for sales tax. If I go out of business in 10 years, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue that's lost. And we shouldn't do that. It should be left up to the individual whether they're going to patronize it. Now the church issue. Government has no business telling you you can't go to church at all. If we have churches in the county that are still closed in January, when I'm brought into office, I'll tell them, open up. Don't listen to the governor, open up. You have a constitutional right to practice your religion. That's hard. We see a crisis and everybody wants to run to government for help. Help me, help me. But when we do that, we crush our rights. And we haven't been strong on our rights. Our churches are smart enough to know their congregation and what is good or good for the congregation, right? So if they want to do Zoom, let them do Zoom. If they want to go in the parking lot and have an outdoor service, let them do it. Don't give them tickets. Okay? If I'm a commissioner, that would never happen. You have a right to practice your religion, whether I agree with your religion or not. That's one of our rights. I would like to pass a resolution, at least bring it up, a resolution with the county to protect our businesses against litigation for COVID or any other viruses. If we can't get it done in Washington, we can do it here in the county, right? So I'd like to propose a resolution for that. The other thing is if you look at Nemaha County, in the last 10 years, have we had any leadership? Look at the 10 years before that. Has anything changed in the county in the last 20 years? Have we seen any change? Not really. We're still fixing the same roads, right? Same problems. We need leadership. We have jobs here. We have plenty of businesses here. But what do they always tell us? We need workers. We are importing workers from overseas into Nemaha County because we don't have enough workers here in the county. We are blessed with the businesses and innovation we have here. We also don't have any leadership for housing. People say, hey, I'd love to come to Nemaha County, it's a great place. But I can't afford $900 rent, and there's no place to rent. How many of you guys heard that? No place to rent. Where am I going to live? So we have what we call sleeper communities, and they come from outside the community, outside of the county, and work here. I think we have more people come during the work hours in the county than actually live here. So we should be looking at ways to get the people to stay here, move in here, invest in Nemaha County. Because if you've got a population that you can double, your tax burden goes down, right? So that's kind of a way of having a tax cut, because now you have more to spread that burden with, right? So I would like to have an actual direction for the county. We need to have that to where a growth. You know, 1920, anybody know what the population was in Nemaha County in 1920? How much?
About 24,000.
Close. 18,500, a little been census 1920. You know what it is last census? 10,100. And it's been a steady decrease. Does anybody look to see why we have a steady decrease with almost half our population? You know, like the definition of the commissioner is a leader, right? And giving goals and leadership. I don't think anybody's asked in 100 years why that is. We might know some of it. Farming's changed, right? We don't have 4 families on a section no more. But we need to see why we're not retaining them in our county. We have wonderful people. We got the jobs, right? Why are they not staying here? We need to look at that. That's something as a county we need to do. And right now we got a good opportunity with a comprehensive plan. They're going to send you out flyers in the mail, and I sure hope Dennis is listening. Put it on there, the direction of the county. We need to know the direction of the county. What do we want to do? Excuse me. Do we want to, say fix Lake Nemaha because people think that'll bring people in? What does the county residents want? Nobody's really asked us, have they? It's just been the same thing over and over again. We need to adapt to changing times, right? We keep decreasing. So that's an opportunity for Dennis to add that into there and see what people in the county actually want to do. Rich, thank you. Thank you very much. I know the men, I have the privilege of having them come into my shop and service their vehicles and put tires on, so I get to meet the sheriffs and his deputies. Wonderful men. Thank them very much. They're great guys, so I'll stand by you 100%. And I won't question your ability to do your job either. One person I do want to recognize here is Zach Goodman. If you want to stand up, please. He's a local guy from Sabetha. Zach is a police officer in Topeka. And I just wanted to say thank you for your service you do for that community, because you also represent our community. So thank you very much. Everybody wants to see around. I smell pork chops. One quick thing, I'm going to finish here. I do want to give thanks to my wife. We had a COVID anniversary this year, the 15-year anniversary. I call it a COVID anniversary. It's because we did nothing. So, thank you. I also found out, if you don't have a good wife, you don't have direction. And a good wife will keep you in the right direction. That's because she'll make you stop and ask for directions. So, I want to give you a verse here from Isaiah 30, verse 21. And it says, "And whenever you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear this command behind you. This is the way, and walk in it." One thing we need to do with our community is we need to bring God back to our community, back to our schools, back to our homes, and back to our county government. It's kind of funny how as soon as you take God out of something, something has to fill that void, and I think we're finding out what that void is. So please stay strong in the faith. We've, as Christians, have backed away from the line and said, oh, let's not cause a scene. And we're at the time where we have to stand up and stand strong. And so on Christian values, I definitely will stand strong with you. Kind of end on a light note, everybody looks kind of here. I'll give you something from one of our great presidents, Ronald Reagan. But I remember a story about a fellow who was running for office as a Republican. And he was in a rural area that wasn't known to be a Republican area. And he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning. And when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped. And he said, wait right here while I go get Mom. She'd never seen a Republican before. So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which he could give a speech. And the only thing he could find was that pile of stuff Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave this speech. At the end of it, the farmer said, that's the first time I've ever heard a Republican speech. And the candidate said, that's the first time I've ever given a speech from a Democratic platform.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dylan. I tell you what, we're getting kind of short on time, and I want to make sure that Mike Cookman has enough time to give us a lot of what's going on in the national and the state. Dylan's going to be around, so ask questions for Dylan after the meal and everything. Our other commissioner candidate was scheduled to be here, and he's getting a combine delivered today, and so he had to be over there, had to be home on that. He's supposed to be coming here a little bit later, so I'm hoping that he does come, and then you can ask questions of your candidates there. But with that, I want to introduce Michael Cookman. Everybody knows Mike Cookman from Seneca. This is Michael Cookman, who's a distant relation, but he's an attorney out of Atchison. He's got a law practice in Kansas City, and he is our Kansas GOP chairman, director. He's the grand poobah. So he was at the convention, the 2020 convention, and got to meet with the president. I believe he got to meet the president and got to attend that. And we just thought that it'd be great to get some insight on the president and the way the national election is going, and also a little bit about Kansas. So, Mike?
Thank you, Ray. My name is Mike Kuckelman, and I am the state party chair. We have one paid full-time employee at the Kansas Republican Party, and that's our executive director, Shannon Golden. The rest of us are volunteers. I have to work a full-time job to keep up with paying the bills and paying my way around the state, doing things that we do. I know that there are, I think here you all call them Kuckelmans. Somehow when we got to Atchison County, we became Kuckelmans. I kind of like the pronunciation here better. All of us came from the same place. We all started here in Nemaha County. We came from Germany to Ohio to Nemaha County, and then some of us ended up in Atchison County. I now am in Kansas City, have a law practice in Kansas City, but still spend a fair amount of my time in Atchison County. I have a farm there in Atchison County, and where I prefer to spend my time. So Ray asked me to visit about the convention, about the state and federal elections, and the state. So let's start with the convention. The convention, as you know, we went forward. We had an in-person convention. There was a lot of criticism by the Democrats of that, having that convention, but it was scaled down. A couple things about the convention. There were about 300 of us present at the convention, and normally you'd have tens of thousands of people in an arena, and a lot more boisterous. We weren't able to do that. We were only able to gather minimally and do the business that we needed to do. Now, I still think there were some shenanigans going on in North Carolina with Democrats trying to stop us from meeting because we couldn't get a quorum and change our rules. We needed to meet. We needed to meet. It would have been a real problem had we not been able to meet. We might not have been able to nominate President Trump for 4 more years. We were able to make it work. We had to pare down. We could have no more than 6 people present per state. They asked us to get that down as low as we could. The minimum you could do is 3 because you need your national committee man, your national committee woman, and you need your state party chair so that you have your RNC delegation. We were able to pare down to 4. Now, there are a couple of things that came out of that I read in the press that was interesting. They said that we opted not to have a platform. The Republican Party opted not to have a platform and instead was just going to do what President Trump said. That is not true. We could not adopt a new platform because we didn't have a platform committee because we couldn't meet to do that. That takes hours and hours of work. So our 2016 platform stands. That we do have a platform. We are not a party without a platform. I get a kick out of that when I see people make that kind of a comment. It's just simply not true. The other thing I would say about the convention, all of our meetings at the Republican convention started with prayer and with the pledge. And one nation under God stayed in there. I saw the Democrats someone sent out a tweet and said President Trump had lied. He said that they removed One Nation Under God from their platform, took God out of their pledge. And then I saw them explain they only did that at 2 of their caucuses. Well, I'm here to tell you we did it at none of our caucuses. We still have God in our pledge, and we're going to keep it that way. We're never coming away from that. And you know, the origin of that, 1956, President Eisenhower, one of our Kansans, he signed that into law. I mean, if you pull out money out of your wallet, every single piece of currency will say, under God. Absolutely it does. Every single time it does. You go to the courthouse, you'll see it in the courtrooms, you'll see it on the courthouse walls. Many law enforcement officers put it on their patrol cars. In God we trust. It's always there, and we are going to keep it that way in the Kansas Party. We firmly believe it. I firmly believe it. Let's talk a little bit about President Trump and why we need to re-elect President Trump. There are a host of reasons. I'm going to just cover 2 quick points with him. The first one, because it's so on point right now, President Trump gets to appoint federal judges, as you know. And all of a sudden we're faced with a vacancy on our U.S. Supreme Court. And President Trump gets to appoint another judge to the Supreme Court. And of course, there's no doubt in my mind that President Trump should appoint another justice before his term is over. Whether he's reelected, and I think he will be, but whether he's reelected or not, he should do that this term. There's no reason to delay that until his next term. I think the Democrats want to do that so that if they somehow could pull off the election, that they would make that determination. Senator Biden in 2016 was tweeting that they should appoint and confirm another justice. Now he's arguing just the opposite. But since the Republicans control the White House and the Senate, they definitely should make an appointment, and they definitely should confirm another justice to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's just no doubt about that. So everything that we're seeing in the media, I wouldn't even argue about it. I just sit back and say they need to do it, and let's all move on. It's the right thing to do. It's within the law, and it would be foolish not to do it. So let people babble on television about it, but just know that it's the right thing to do. It's the constitutional thing to do. President Trump has more than just the U.S. Supreme Court to take care of, or to handle. You know, he's appointed over 200, probably around 250 judges so far. And many of those judges are federal district court judges, and those judges matter to all of us. He has vetted and appointed over 250. These are Article 3 judges. We call them Article 3 because it comes from Article 3 in our U.S. Constitution. These judges are appointed for life. There's no retention vote. You know, here in Kansas, we have retention vote of our judges, that are state court judges. Some areas they're actually elected. On the federal level, an Article 3 judge, once appointed, is appointed for their lifetime. These are important positions. We just had one in Kansas come out of committee, and now we'll go to the full Senate for a vote. A federal judge here in Kansas, an appointee. And Senator Feinstein again is calling him out, attacking our Kansas appointee because of positions he took in briefs on behalf of his client, the state of Kansas. So the state of Kansas, the legislature passed laws. Toby Cook, when he was Solicitor General for Kansas, his job is to handle these on appeal at the U.S. Supreme Court, and he did. He argued on our behalf laws that were enacted by our Kansas legislature, and they're attacking him on those issues. And she has a history of that. If you think about some of the other appointments we've seen, I don't know if you're aware, there was a judge appointed, a district court judge, federal district court judge, in Omaha, Nebraska. And they attacked him because he is a member of a radical men's organization. I heard laughter. Somebody already knows what radical men's organization he's a member of. He's a member of the Knights of Columbus, a men's fraternal organization who raises money to benefit children who have special needs, Special Olympics, for example. They asked him at the confirmation hearing whether he would resign from that organization if he were appointed. We're talking about the Knights of Columbus. This is crazy. I mean, it's just unacceptable that they would do that. One of President Trump's potential nominees to the U.S. Supreme Court, Judge Amy Barrett, she has 7 children, I think, or 8, I'm not sure which. You know, when she went through her last confirmation hearing, you know what they attacked her about? The line was, the dogma lives within. They were talking about her Christian faith, her Catholicism. Apparently she wears it. She acts like a Christian. She lives her life as a Christian. And that was a criticism? That the dogma lives within? There should never be a religious test applied to any judicial appointments. Yet I can give you 2 instances where we've seen that with the Democrats in President Trump's last term. I personally hope that he does appoint Amy Barrett. I think she'd be a fantastic justice to the Supreme Court. And I actually admire her, that you can tell by the way she lives her life, or as they said, the dogma lives within. I think that's fantastic that she does that. So we need President Trump because we need to keep handling the judicial appointments the way that we have. The other reason we need President Trump, and there are lots of them, but let me give you just one quick one and a second one. And this just came out last week. Senator Biden put together a proposed budget to give us a look at what his budget would look like if he became president of the United States. And not many newspapers have carried the detailed information, but there's a business school in Pennsylvania called the Wharton School of Business, well known, a very highly thought of school of business. And they analyzed the budget that Biden said that he would seek to have adopted. We can't afford that budget. It adds about $5.4 trillion to our budget. Now, I know when we talk trillions, people's eyes glaze over. Before I went to law school, I was a CPA, and I couldn't handle the excitement of it, so I left and went to law school. So let's talk about 5.4 trillion. Let's put some context to that. Do you remember candidate Hillary Clinton? She had a proposed budget. Biden's budget is double, more than double her 2016 proposed budget. More than double what Hillary Clinton wanted to spend. It's just unimaginable we could do that to our country. In fact, the Wharton School of Business said that if that budget were adopted, it would consume 24% of our GDP. So everything we produce in this great country, the first 1/4 of it would go to the federal government under the Biden budget. I don't think we can afford that. But you know, you don't see it very many places. I've started carrying it around with me because it was in the Wall Street Journal last, I think it was Tuesday. But they actually ran an article about it and laid it out. And I, of course, now carry that article with me because I've not seen it in other media. But it's something that people need to be paying attention to. That kind of a budget is just, we just couldn't handle it. Sticking with the federal, talking about our U.S. Senate race. We need Congressman Roger Marshall to be elected to the U.S. Senate. And the way we can do that, we need 3 things. One, we need to get out the vote. We need all of you to, obviously I know this group will be out to vote. But can you take somebody? Can you get somebody else signed up? Can you encourage somebody? Do you have children? Do you have family members? You have people who say they're busy. We need every single person out there voting. And, as I go through parts of Kansas, I know that Roger Marshall will carry their district easily. I know that he will. But we need more out of these districts because there's an area called Johnson County, Kansas. I live there. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Some of the votes in Johnson County, Kansas, and what I'm seeing people in Johnson County do, I just scratch my head. And what is going on in Johnson County? And there are probably lots of reasons that people are frustrated with Johnson County throughout our state. Historically, I know that there have been. But this is a real head scratcher. But we have to ask more of the rest of our state to counterbalance Johnson County. How about that? You have to hear from someone ask you to do more than you're already doing to help with Johnson County. But that's what I'm here to ask you to do. We need voter turnout in this state. We're going to spend a small fortune in the Kansas Republican Party working on get out the vote because it's critical that we have it. Second thing we need to do with Dr. Marshall is keep sending him money. Anybody that can. Because they are just dumping money into this state. You remember the primary? They put in several $1 million, the Democrats did, from out of state to try to influence who would be the nominee for our Senate seat. That hasn't stopped. That money's still coming in. I went through her FEC report recently. I do a lot of litigation in New York. I spent years there. I was one of the 5 lawyers on the World Trade Center litigation appointed by the Southern District of New York. I spend a lot of time in New York City. I have friends who are lawyers in New York City. I'm going through an FEC report, and I'm seeing lawyers that I know. And I know that we don't agree politically at all. So they have Chuck Schumer. Why do they get to pick our next U.S. Senator in this great state of Kansas? It's not the way it's meant to be. We have to counter that spin. We have to counter it, get out the vote. We have to counter it by giving money. The other thing we have to do is keep Dr. Marshall out in front of groups like this, keep him up on television. The ads that Dr. Bollier run just make my head spin. They keep putting her out there as somebody who gets along with Republicans and Democrats. You know, she voted with the Democrats. Probably 90, what was it, 90%? 90% voting record with the Democrats. Is there anything moderate about her at all? I mean, they are selling something that can't be sold because it's not true. So we need to keep working on that. You know, and the other federal race, of course, Jake LaTurner. That race looks really good for us, but again, we've got to get out the vote. Jake has a candidate running against him that I asked him the one question because I heard that she had been speaking about how she defunded the police before that was such a cool thing. She had been working on that, and then she says that that's a bad label to put on it. Well, I don't care what label you put on it. It's a bad idea. We need more funding in law enforcement, not less. And you know, I do a lot of constitutional law, and I litigate some of those cases. And I'm here to tell you that 98% at least of our law enforcement officers are good, honorable people. But they're just like any other profession. There's a minuscule group that are bad apples. They're no different than doctors. They're no different than lawyers. We've got them in our legal practice. We have to disbar lawyers every year. But you can't define an entire group of people by 2%. Instead, we have to deal with the 2%. This defund the police that she has, that's a crazy idea. So we need Jake LaTurner. Our state races. We have so many important state races. Here's why. We're doing 2 things right now. I mean, having Governor Kelly as our governor is a real headache when you're a state party chair. It creates all kinds of problems for me, but I know it creates problems for you as well. We are working already. We have to multitask. We are working right now on trying to develop people to give Republicans an option who to put up to run against Laura Kelly. We can't afford a second term with Laura Kelly. And I know everybody sometimes when I start talking about this, they're like, can we just get through November 3rd? No, we can't. We have to start talking about it soon. We have to take some steps November 3rd, and here's what I mean by that. We need a veto-proof majority in Topeka, both the Senate and the House. We have to have it. If we do not have a veto-proof, a supermajority in Topeka in both chambers, we can't control Governor Kelly. And we have redistricting coming up. Do you think the map won't look funny on some of our districts? We can't afford to not get out and support all of these state candidates. We have to have a supermajority in Topeka. It's just, we don't have any choice. It's the only way we can control her. Let's talk about COVID. You know, the Republicans on the committee, on the Finance Council, they had to vote to extend that by 30 days. There were some reasons, law and order for one, that had to be done. But one request that we made was, if you're going to do that, talking to Republicans, extract from her a pledge, a written pledge, because I need her to write it down because it doesn't always mean anything if she just says it. She will not shut down businesses in this state again. Our economy can't take it. Do you know where we rank right now in unemployment? We're 51st. We're dead last. This state is dead last in terms of unemployment. Somebody asked me the other day, said, how can that be? There are 50 states. Of course, so we're including the District of Columbia, obviously, in that calculation. We're even behind the District of Columbia on unemployment. We're dead last. We cannot take another shutdown in this state. It's not possible. Our economy can't handle it. She did agree to put that in writing. but it wasn't easy to get that from her, which scares me because you would think, looking at the current situation, any governor would say, I'll put that in writing all day long. I'll put it on billboards if you want me to. We're not going to do that. We're not going to shut down our economy again. We're in the bottom 5 states, by the way, with COVID testing. When I see people say that the governor's done a good job with COVID, I don't understand where they're coming from. We're in the bottom 5 states in COVID testing. You know, the Wall Street Journal ran an article. You know how they put in bold sometimes for people who won't read the whole article, they give you some important points, and it said Kansas fudged the numbers. Oh. We got caught. We didn't. Our governor did. And Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Dr. Norman, got caught. It was right there in the Wall Street Journal. Kansas fudged a chart to make it look like they were heroes in the way they had handled the mask mandate. We're bottom 5 in COVID testing. How could she claim success when we don't even have the testing in this state that other states do? And I don't know, my head will explode if she tries to blame that somehow on our former Governor Brownback. He's been gone for how long, but she blames everything on him. You know what her solution is for the revenue shortfall we're going to have in this state? She has no plan. Her plan is the federal government will take care of it. You add that to Biden's proposed tax plan, and we're really in trouble, right? But the other reason as a Kansan, we can't look to the federal government is because then every other state's going to. Have you heard about this place called Illinois where they have Chicago? California? I mean, this is like going out to the most expensive steak restaurant and you have a salad, and California and Illinois have the best wine, appetizer, soup, salad, and the best steak, and then you get done and you say, how about we divide it up equally? That's what it would be like relying on the federal government to fix that revenue shortfall. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's not a plan at all. So, again, we have to keep her in control. The way to do that is with these state elections. Somebody asked me about freedoms and about COVID. Did any of you hear what happened up at Benedictine College in Atchison? Are you familiar with that situation? It was outrageous. Outrageous. You know what they tried to do? Benedictine College had a positivity rate. They were doing 100% testing. Bear in mind, in Kansas, we're in the bottom 5 as a state under Governor Kelly. The president of Benedictine College said, we're going to do 100%. They had about a 2.6 positivity rate. To give that some relativity, in Kansas, we're over 10% positivity rate. So the students are testing about 20% of the rest of our state. So what happened next is mind-boggling. I was at a function in Topeka with the Kansas Chamber, and I got a text from somebody and said, did you hear what they're trying to do in Atchison? They're trying to quarantine 2,000 people by order. And I thought, that can't be right. They said, there's an emergency here, and I ran out to my truck, and I got my computer, and I went and sat in a corner at this event I was at and started looking at it. They issued notice at 4:45 p.m. that there would be an emergency meeting at 5:30. 45 minutes notice. And sure enough, they were going to quarantine 2,000 students who are testing better than everybody in the state. I got a copy of the order. I've never read an order like this in my life. I do constitutional law. This was the most overreaching order I have ever seen, and unconstitutional. Quarantine is meant to take someone who is sick and you say to them, you have been diagnosed with this illness and you can transmit it. Therefore, we need you to go home and stay home. If you're a sick person, you have to stay home for the benefit of the rest of us. It was never intended that we would grab a group of people, a whole bunch of people, and take away their civil liberties, take away their right, their freedom. Yet that's what they were doing in Atchison. They did this for 2 days. They tried to get this order passed. And the county commission there said they were working with KDHE, which I thought was fascinating, that KDHE was involved in this. I'd really like to tie it back to KDHE. Because if the governor was doing this, you know what they were going to do? These students were going to have a good outcome. It was predictable based on their positivity rate. They were going to have a good outcome. They're going to lock these people up for 2 weeks, and then they're going to claim victory because they're going to say, hey, look what happened at the rate. And this is the model we should be using in the rest of the state. That's what was going to happen. We immediately went to work. I had several lawyers who volunteered to help. We started putting together petitions, habeas corpus petitions. On a quarantine order, you're entitled by statute to an order within 72 hours of asking for one. We were going to file these on the Friday before Labor Day, because that's when the order was signed. It was never entered. It was never filed with the clerk, and therefore it didn't have effect. It's not effective until it's filed. But the order had been signed by the local health officer. 2 days in a row they signed 2 different orders that were as overreaching as you can imagine. So these students, somewhere between one, because I know we had at least one student who wanted a hearing, and 2,000 students, however many it was going to be, were all going to have a hearing within 72 hours, paid for by you, the taxpayers. And I told the county commission that I had estimated each hearing would cost about $1,000. So if 500 students want to have a hearing, you're going to spend $500,000 Labor Day weekend losing on an unconstitutional order. But I was concerned that if the first student walked out of the courthouse and said, I'm free, the rest of you, 1,999 of you, are still committed, are still locked up, all of them were going to parade right down to the courthouse. Who wouldn't? Remember, if you were a college student, didn't know what you would do, you immediately said, I'm going to go get my hearing. These kids, otherwise, are going to be locked in their dorm rooms for 2 weeks. They could come out 3 times a day to collect a box meal, and that's it. That's it. 3 times a day they could come out of their dorm room, walk down to a tent, and pick up a box meal and take it back and eat it, and do that for 2 weeks. I still can't believe that anyone who thinks anything about this thing called the Constitution would think you could do that. But here they were about to do it. I mean, this is a mask mandate on steroids. I've never seen anything like it before. I'm happy to report to you that as of Friday, when that 2-week, I called it house arrest, which they complained about. They said it's a quarantine, not house arrest. I said, go look up the definition of house arrest. This is house arrest of people who don't have it. Some of these kids have 2 negative COVID tests in their hands. They all had to have 1 before they could even report to the campus. Many of them, once they arrived there, had a second one, and so they're holding 2 negative COVID tests, and they're about to be locked up for 2 weeks. What happened to Benedictine College can happen in other places. It really can. I mean, this is something we have to pay attention to and to work on that. So when it comes to our freedoms, folks, don't take them for granted. This COVID, I have used the analogy before that happened during World War II. Sometimes when people get scared, we're willing to give up the next guy's constitutional rights. Don't take mine, but if it's for the safety, I'm willing to trample the next guy's constitutional rights. That's a dangerous thing to go down. We did that during World War II. President Roosevelt he issued that order, and they interred Japanese Americans. These were American citizens, and President Reagan, later issued an apology, and he said that it was fear that drove that unconstitutional order. It was fear, and our Republican president, Ronald Reagan, years later, issued a formal apology and explained that. And we always have to be cognizant of that. We never, ever allow the person next to us to lose their constitutional rights unjustly, because if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. So we need to take all of this quite seriously. All right. Yes, sir.
So this whole scenario, people that signed up 2 orders, accountability?
Yeah. Okay. You ask a very good question. And this is true probably in every county in Kansas, all 105. The person who signed it is the local health officer, the county health officer, who is not elected. Not elected. Now, the county commissioners in that county said there was nothing they could do about it because the health officer had the authority. That's false. There's a statute right on the as you know, because you don't have a mask mandate. The county commission can override that. This one just chose not to, but they were telling people at the hearing, at the emergency meeting, there's nothing we can do as a county commission. It's like you're doing it by doing nothing. You are doing it by doing nothing. Yeah, that was dangerous. So. All right, well, I know that it's time to eat. Ray, do you want me to take a couple questions, or do you want to?
If anybody else has a couple questions, let's take Okay. We're talking about election fraud. You know, in the state of Kansas, of course, we have voter ID laws and everything, and I'm sure there's going to be mail-out ballots. How do we safeguard against collecting or ballot harvesting and that in Kansas? And then nationwide, how do we go about rectifying this situation?
Right, so election fraud. First of all, I think Kansas is probably one of the better states. Kansas, by the way, has allowed advance voting and mail-in ballots for years. What was different this cycle was Kansas sent out applications. And my objection to sending out applications, you go to a college town, for example, a fraternity house or a sorority house, the turnover there is frequent. But somebody may have registered to vote. Now this application, or lots of applications, show up for people who no longer reside there. Somebody could try to make use of that. The application, at some level in this state, we have to take a little bit of responsibility to go vote. It's not that hard in Kansas. You can advance vote now. You can vote early vote, advance vote. You can do it. It's so easy. I'm traditional. I still go at 7 o'clock on election day. I don't know why, because I just get a big thrill out of it, much to the chagrin of my children. In the August primary, I have 3 adult children. They're college kids. And I made all 3 of them get out of bed and go vote with my wife and myself. And the one son said, "Dad, I don't have to work until 3 o'clock. I can go vote between now and 3. I said, "No, you're going to vote with me right now." It's not that hard. There's so many things that we can do. So these added, sending out the application, I thought was a step too far. We were opposed to that. But I keep reminding people, Kansas has made it so easy to vote. There's no reason to do that. I voted, I was living in London for a period of time, and my wife and I voted by fax. Did you know you can vote by fax in Kansas? You can. You can. I called and explained to them. They said, "Nobody's ever voted by fax." I said, "It's in the statute. I can vote by fax." They said, "Well, someone will see your ballot when we take it off the fax machine. We can't promise you that your ballot will be confidential as to at least one person." And I said, "Well, that doesn't really bother me because I'm pretty much a big mouth about who I vote for, so I'm not really worried about it being confidential." But I appreciated them telling me that. Yeah, we can vote in this state. It's so much easier in this state. We do have good safeguards, but that was a problem, I thought, the application. I was opposed to that. I talked to Secretary of State about it. I think he knew that I thought it was a dangerous idea. He had reasons that he gave that supported it, but I personally still am opposed to it. I hope we don't do it again.
Nationwide, what do you see?
Well, you start seeing some of the stories that people, the ballot harvesting, as you talk about. There are areas, there are pockets where there's real concern about that. President Trump has stated he's very concerned about it. It is difficult. These are important. A ballot's an important thing. Look at the security. Those of you, when you renew your passport, how secure that is to get your passport. But yet a ballot, we're just going to send out these applications. I think there are parts of the country, Ray, where there are problems. I don't see it as much here in Kansas. I think we're fairly safe. But why let your guard down? Why let your guard down? You have a lock on your house. Many of you have never had a burglar. Why do you keep locking your door? Just leave one locked. My point being that, what do they say? An ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. We all lock our door when we leave. At least where I live, you do. We have to. I probably shouldn't use that example around here because I know that some people probably don't actually lock their door. but the point being that I've never been burglarized, but I lock my door all the time. And I think it's the same with the ballot. Just because we can't show repeated instances of it doesn't mean we should let our security down. Those ballots are important. The right to vote, that's a big entitlement. That's a big responsibility, and we should treat it like that.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Well, thank Michael. He's going to be around. He's going to be around after dinner and everything to speak, and so will a few of the other candidates. Right now, I want to thank Terry and Nancy Miller, who run Burn Meats. They donated the pork chops that you're about ready to eat. And Jolene Hunland, who catered the rest of the meal. And so I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised and happy with that. Right now I'd like to introduce Dor Goodman, who is our co-chair, and she would like to lead us in prayer.
That thing squeals a lot. If you notice over here, there's a flag called Appeal to Heaven. That flag was flown on George Washington's ships during the Revolutionary War. And when I first got it, it's been years, I've had it probably at least 7 years. And when I first got it, I was intrigued enough by the history of it. But it was actually a pastor that led them into the Revolutionary War by his teaching. And that made them build this. The tree was the economic value of some of the landowners who had farms. And they cut those trees because they used them in ships. And England wanted those trees. Enough so that they marked them. They didn't pay for them. They marked them. It's called the King's Broad Arrow. And the trees would be marked out in their pastures, in their land. They couldn't touch them. If they did, they were fined and jailed, even though it was their land and their trees. And so it was just kind of cool, the story of it. But Jonathan Mayhew was the pastor who wrote about it. And this is where I come in as a Christian. I kind of was taught, I'm AC, came from the AC background. We didn't really get out and vote. We were taught, no, that's not what we are called to do. But according to Jonathan Mayhew, that's why they started the Revolutionary War. It was because of Romans 13, 1 through 3. When good men are in civil government, we vote them in, and they do good things for the benefit of the society. Honest, liberty, truth. Then you support them, and you stay in submission so you don't get in trouble with them. But nowhere does it say once they started doing evil things, when they turn good to evil and they call it that way, we're supposed to resist. And if you do it, it's by standing up, one, do it by prayer. Get on your hands and knees and pray for this country. Pray for the men and women who are in those leadership roles. Because if you don't, then you're supporting the evil. And I won't. I can't. So this prayer is for them and for our country. Father God, we just come before you as people. We are humbled by the evil that has come up as a flood against my country, my people. And they've done it in ways that have reduced us to humility, standing here saying, what is happening to my country? But the good word that you wrote, my Father, was that you would raise a standard. And that standard's being raised right now in this room, in this county, in this state, in this nation. We will stand against the evil. We will do it one by one. We will go to our neighbors. We will help them. And we will serve and put you first, because according to your word, that's where good comes in. Good, honest, beautiful societies. So I ask, Lord, that you would turn the hearts of our people back to you. And get these good young men and women that are out there. I know they're out there. I heard 2 of them already. Get them to get up and say, you know what, I'm going to take a position of leadership. And we're going to go forward. And we're going to be the representation that you have called us to be. We're appealing to heaven. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Dort. See, what we'd like like to do is start the dinner, and we'll probably start over in this side and then work our way around. We want to also remind you that we do have the 2 tables over here for silent auction. So if anybody wants to bid on a hat or a clothing item or a flag, we got Trump flags. We've got everything there. We are going to do that after we eat. So don't leave right after you eat. Just stick around. We're also going to do the gun raffle right after we eat, or the Second Amendment. We always do a Second Amendment raffle, and we'll do that right after we eat too. So stick around. But right now, I'd like to have, if we can start, we'll start at this table over here, and we'll work our way around.